Day, everybody. It is time. We are going. It is CX Day. Happy CX Day to everybody out there. Sydney Nelson, Nate Brown. We are coming at you live from Westlight Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. I have never been more excited for a CX Day, and that's saying a lot because this is like our Super Bowl. I absolutely love this day.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we got some great stuff prepared today.
Yeah. We're super excited. You know, we are just 2 years in business, and so this is our first official Officium event. Woo! What better way to kick off than with CX Day? We have so much in store for you. We've put in a lot of work and a lot of thought. We don't want this to be just another webinar. We really want this to be a time where you guys get poured into, you feel lit up, you feel like you're networking, connecting with people, and just having fun while you're doing it. Like, we've all had a really hard couple of years. I mean, It's not even 1 year now. And so we really want to just bless you guys and have such a great time while we're doing it. So we're super excited.
Heck yeah. Well, we got John Pompei on stage as well. Hello, John.
Hey, you guys. Excited to be here. And, you know, if it was up to me, CX Day would be every day because the people that work in this industry deserve to be recognized for the hard work and what they pour into it every single day, taking care of customers, no matter what brand you're supporting. So excited to be participating today and looking forward to learning and sharing all day long.
Love it. Great stuff. Well, we have some great speakers, as mentioned, that will be on in a little bit. So hang out with us as much as you can. But if you need to drop out and have a bite to eat or join a meeting, that's totally okay. Come on back. Yeah. And we'll definitely have these sessions recorded that we'll be able to send out as well. So don't feel like you're missing anything. And as Sid said, please chat us. We want to interact with you. These lights are really hot. Yeah. And the only way to cool us off is for you to chat to us. So save our lives up here.
And too, I heard that there might be some rewards going out for people that are engaged or, you know, who knows? You didn't hear it from me.
We might have some killer swag from Midday Squares.
Hey, who knows? I don't want to give anything away, but yeah. So
I want to give a lot away. So let's go.
John is a generous man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's just talk a little bit about the state of CX and kind of where we are today. So me and Sydney did some research on this, and we were very pleasantly encouraged. Yeah. You know, it's felt really hard, and there has been new challenges that we never thought we'd be facing as CX professionals, accelerating, especially in the areas of digital transformation and beyond. But I love this fact that Forrester, so they have their famous CX index. It's about the best way in our industry that we know how we are doing out in the world in terms of global CX. And their customer experience ranking has improved over the past year and a half by 21%.
Wow. So
that means that you as CX professionals, you're not only surviving out there, that you are thriving and overcoming these challenges in remarkable ways. So, I mean, hats off to you, literally. Just amazed at what you're accomplishing. I mean, that's a tremendous thing to be able to celebrate. John, Cindy, was that surprising to you?
Yeah, when I first heard it, certainly I was surprised. But as I really resonated with it and thought about it, in the times that we're dealing with, and with more and more people using more and more brands for different things, customer experience had to continue to step up and evolve. And so it's really not as shocking to me when I thought about it. But again, kudos to everyone out there that's delivering these great experiences day in, day out.
You're kicking butt. You're serving well. So thank you for that. And throwing another stat at you, 70% of consumers say that technology has made it easier to switch brands than ever before. So we're coming off our celebration cloud a little bit here. That one was meant to punch you in the gut a little bit. We've almost, because of how good we've done, not just as CX professionals, but in general with this digital transformation that has happened, accelerated over the past 2 years, it's actually brought the cost of change way down and the intimidation of change way down as we look at what held people on and kind of in a way forced them to be loyal. Now that's opened up their eyes to new possibilities, and it's easier for them to now switch to other brands. So, of course, what is the best way to retain and to collect loyalty? It's through a great experience every time. Absolutely. That's what's gonna happen there. But I was really surprised to hear this one, John. How about you?
Yeah, again, I don't know if I can say I was surprised to hear it, but the reality is it just puts more and more of a spotlight on the value of customer experience. Bingo. And the great work that people have to do day in, day out. So It's really an important thing that we all do every day, and it continues to make a difference for the brands that we serve. So let's continue to, think about it that way and not just think about it as we're an after the fact.
Yep, love it. And thank you for that comment, Christy. Love that idea of stickiness. It's amazing to me how sticky CX can be. I mean, people can rip off an innovation overnight.
Yep.
The best technical innovation, the best process improvement, some kind of innovation around a service offering or they can rip that off so quickly. What they cannot replicate and what takes years to form is a great customer experience. It's a gift that you can offer to your customers that nobody else can give. That's how you create that stickiness. Love it. Okay, last one as we think about the state of CX here. I love this. So this is from Fast Company a few months ago. 70% of consumers worldwide think that a company is only as good as its customer service. Period.
Yeah.
It's exciting for us, right? The fact that the reputation of a brand has now been so encapsulated by customer service and CX capabilities. We are the reputation of the brand. We are the most strategic function inside of these businesses. I love this stat.
Yeah. And customers know when you're faking it.
True.
Customers know when it's not actually a priority and it's just something to save face. And I think this year has really shown the companies that really genuinely care about their customers, because that's been a priority, not just something immediately, we got to fix it because we didn't take it seriously. Like that's something that's really put customers and companies ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about my favorite CX author of all time is Denise Yohn, and she wrote that brilliant book Fusion. I think it was 2017 or so. And I mean, it's very prophetic in the sense of talking about brand promise and organizations saying things out into the world of this is what we're going to do for you, customer. This is what we're going to do for you, community. And it's a promise being made. Here's our service. Here's our product that we're giving to you. But the customer experience is what makes that promise real. That's what makes it authentic and generates that loyalty. If you can't back that promise up, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
And these past 2 years have been a battleground for proving the accuracy of your promises.
Yeah.
And some brands have leveraged that to collect great market share and to show how real they are being towards these commitments. Other brands compromise. And we get that. We're not punishing those brands necessarily because this has been really hard.
Yeah.
But those brands who have stepped up and invested more, put more energy to the employee experience, to the customer experience, they are winning. They are reaping the rewards.
Yeah. And
there's
I loved Michaela's comment. She said employees know when they're faking it too.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's Amen.
We're all here. We know that, right? That's so true.
Yeah, for sure, you guys. And again, there's so much competition out there in the world these days that it's easy to move from one brand to another. And the companies that continue to invest and step up and focus on that experience for their employees and their customers are the ones that are continuing to, rise up and gain more value from their customers. So you can see it as it's happening.
Rise up. I'm thinking Hamilton right now.
Yeah.
It's a great song.
Love Hamilton.
Good. Well, one other principle that we want to kick off with here, and then we've got a treat for you. We have Jonathan Shroyer, the CEO of Officium Labs. He's got an awesome presentation on the ROI of CX that he's going to deliver for us. But before that, me and Sydney and John have been talking. We like to call ourselves the Dream Team.
Yeah.
But we've been talking quite a bit about how this work has never been more important, in my opinion. There's a bit of a dark side that has happened in the CX world recently too around customer behaviors. And I think we need to acknowledge that. There's a really great article that Neil Davey put out on Customer Think that hit me in the stomach hard. And it was around customer behaviors and how much they've deteriorated in terms of the respect that they're showing towards service workers. I mean, there's people spitting on grocery clerks in the UK. There's people just on a hair trigger to scream and to yell at these service professionals. And it's a tough reality. So I view us as CX professionals as the ones who get to bring peace and harmony to these situations.
Yeah.
And that happens in a few different ways. We have to protect our people from our customers through great processes and never put them in a situation where they're bound to fail in front of a customer. We get to insulate them with great experience design to guide them and help them to be able to guide their customers to success. So that's one way that we bring peace and harmony to this. But then I really feel like the most contagious thing in the world beyond any pandemic is energy, specifically positive energy.
Yeah.
And when we invest that in our people and give them that gift, that is something that they can very easily transfer onward to their customers, to each other. And I feel like it's the greatest thing as a CX leader that we can do is offer hope, offer psychological safety. It's just so important.
Yeah. And I hope too, as you're hearing us talk about it, we're passionate about this, and we hope that if you don't already, which we hope you do, that your job is so critically important. And if you don't get enough spotlight, we hope that today and this session that you just feel like really poured into, and that us here, we are your biggest cheerleaders.
Indeed.
And that we fully believe companies and customers would not be as great without you guys. So hopefully this just makes you feel empowered to know that your job is super, super important.
John, anything you want to throw in on that?
The first thing that came to mind is, as you guys are talking about that, is CX Pep Rally, right? I mean, it's like every day Nate Brown is a CX Pep Rally,
Not every day.
And well, it should be every day, right? So,
I try.
Managers and leaders within the CX industry need to be driving that pep rally within their organizations every day to recognize and keep their folks really excited about what they do. Because 9 out of 10 times, it's a tough interaction that you might be dealing with. Yeah. But having that fire and that motivation and excitement about the value you're bringing to the world and the people that you're serving makes a difference. So keep up the energy, keep up the focus, and managers and leaders keep driving those CX pep rallies.
Yeah, that positivity is going to trump. It's going to excel beyond great process, great tools. If you want to look at loyalty on the employee level and what's generating that, peer-to-peer connections, great relationships on a peer-to-peer level. And so we as leaders get to create a fertile garden in which those relationships can grow. And we must focus on that. So great stuff. So hopefully a challenge, also an encouragement, respecting and just honoring the reality that is out there and how difficult it is right now. This is not easy. It's never been so hard. And it's also never been so important.
Yeah.
Great stuff. So let's transition. I do want to do an activity with everybody real quick. We would love to know one way that if you think about this past year, allow yourself to go back in time to where you were sitting in October of 2020 as a CX or customer service person. How have you grown this year? I mean, we know that we have, because of this customer experience Forrester index and so many other indicators where we've seen organizations thrive. But I want you to think about how you have grown and put that out to us. Put that in the chat here in YouTube, or put that on Twitter for us, and we'll be able to see it there. Hashtag CX Day and tag Officium Labs so that we make sure that we see that. But take a minute there and just put that out. We're thrilled to hear, and we want to celebrate with you in a way that you've grown. So we got some coming in here.
Yeah. Got lots of fun people on. Josh Lopez, hello. Sean Murphy, Christy, Kristen. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We love seeing your comments. I love this one. I need a suit like that, Nate, from Josh Lopez.
You too, on Amazon.com.
Okay. If anyone needs any type of loud suit, fun suits, colorful patterns, this is your guy. Trust me.
I was literally thinking this morning 2 things. I have a large novelty suit collection in my closet. There's 12 or 15 in there. And it's actually the best diet thing that I have.
Yeah.
Because if my waistline grows too much, I can no longer fit into my novelty suit collection. It's been phenomenally motivating in this regard. Nobody needed to know that, but now you do.
Yeah.
All right, we got it. Well, let me share mine. So I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I'm gonna get a little emotional. So I was really in a bit of a tough place 2 years ago. I was stuck, and I did not feel like I had freedom to work. To do the things that I wanted to do, to spread my wings as a CX professional. And Jonathan and Officium, they made that possible for me to explore. And we have this whole mentality, this idea of not being afraid to fail. And you're not failing, you're learning. And in that, you are winning. Either you're winning or you're learning. That classic Nelson Mandela. And I mean, I needed that. I had a lot of self-doubt. I was just a victim of a lot of things I couldn't see. And these past 2 years for me have been phenomenally freeing. in terms of my ability to create, to excel, to try, to experiment. And that's just been remarkable. Have I done everything right? Not at all. But I have learned so much and grown so much over these past 2 years by trying things out and having the freedom to do that. So thank you to John and Jonathan and those for making that possible for me. We got any others coming in here?
Yeah, Michaela, I was laid off during COVID and am now back at it. We've known
Awesome.
so many people that have gone through that. 2020 was a hard year. And so that in itself is such a victory. So
Yeah.
congratulations, Michaela. We're so glad you're back at it, making a difference for your customers. We really, really appreciate it.
Good work, Michaela.
Yeah, and Jason, we love Jason sharing just kind of what he is going through. Really coming to understand the 3 key things in CX that can make a difference.
What are they?
What are they,
That's
Jason?
such a teaser, Jason. The 3 most critical things of CX. We need to know what they are.
Yes. Kristen, I met a guy that was disappointed that Nate's not here.
Well,
Love it.
yeah, I'm not there. Sorry. Next year.
I love it.
Very cool. Well, thank you all and keep those coming in. We'd love to hear the ways that you're learning and growing. It would be really exciting for us. So we appreciate that. Okay. Well, I believe we have with us on deck Jonathan Shroyer. So let me welcome and introduce the CEO and co-founder of Officium Labs, Jonathan. We started this amazing thing a couple years ago, Jonathan and Scott McCabe did, and it has grown into something that I don't think even Jonathan knew exactly what was going on, and has really taken hold and caused a bit of a revolution in the CX space. So we're excited to hear from Jonathan how that's happened. And he's especially gifted. He's gifted in all the areas of CX, but one in particular where I've really been a protege under him has been in this area of how to calculate the ROI of CX, improve that value. So very excited to hear this presentation. Jonathan, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for letting me join, guys. What a beautiful studio you have in the background. And what an amazing way to kick off CX Day with that awesome energy, as you noted, and then those statistics. I mean, they feed right into not only my presentation, but a number of presentations that we have throughout the day about the power, the influence, and the capability of CX to drive that stickiness, to drive that loyalty in a time where eyeballs, go one way if you don't have a good customer experience. I really appreciate you guys kicking this off, and I'm excited to share a little bit about the ROI of customer experience, what we've learned at Officium with some of our clients and some of our history. So thanks for the opportunity, Nate and Sydney.
Yeah, no problem. Awesome. Well, Jonathan, take it away.
All right. So if we want to share the screen, Sydney, I think we lost the deck on the screen, just so you're aware. Cool. Let's go to the next slide. So when we think about the problem of the ROI of CX, each of us feel it every day. We know inherently that there's a challenge that needs to be solved with every product that we support. And sometimes our product teams, our engineering teams, our executive teams listen to us, and sometimes they don't. But when you look at the macro level of the overall customer experience problem, when Scott and I started Officium, we did some analysis. And at that time, Sarv.com released a study that said roughly around $339 billion are lost a year because of poor customer experience, poor customer service. And as we thought through that challenge, we wanted to understand, what are companies investing into customer service and customer experience, and what's the return on that investment? So when you look at Statista, they did an analysis last year that basically said the BPO services industry is about $220 billion. So for those of you that can do math, essentially we're spending $220 billion to lose $339 billion. And in any situation, that's a bad startup, that's a bad business model. And it really illuminates the challenges that we all feel and that we all see every day with customer experience and customer service, and how we need to revolutionize it and transform it and get the executive teams and the product and engineering teams really listening to us. But what I've often found is that in those conversations, they listen more when they have data as well as anecdote. And so today I want to share a little bit about how we can create a story that has anecdote as well as data to support us as CX and CS professionals. So as we get started, let's start off with a poll question. So I think this is a LinkedIn poll, but what are the biggest pain points in improving ROI in CX and CS for you? So you can leave your comments in the chat below. As you guys start to write your comments in, often some pain points that I've seen in the past, some folks have talked about the data being the issue. It's difficult to correlate the customer service data or the customer experience data with product and engineering. A couple of the other points, sometimes CS or CX doesn't have a seat at the table. Is that they don't feel empowered or enabled to be able to deliver that value or that story, or even just to be heard. And another one that I often hear is inside the customer service organization, we're operating in silos and we're not thinking about things from an experience standpoint, and we're not correlating or talking with other teams to understand like how the entire journey of the customer experience looks like as well. It looks like McKaylee says getting access to the data from other departments they don't want to share. Totally, 100%. That's a really great point. Another one that I've heard in the past is as people think about the value and the activities that they put in on a day-to-day basis, that sometimes it's not always appreciated by other parts of the company or perhaps by some parts of the organization. And so they don't feel empowered to be able to do that in the future or put that energy, as Nate talked about it. Kristen Pierce, really great point, the availability of that LTV data. So being able to look at what your overall experience is to what those impact metrics are at the business level. I think Kirsty has a good one here, measuring how valuable customers are. Oftentimes, product teams will look at things from a specific point of view of value and success. Sometimes that works out really well, and other times it can be narrow or possibly short-sighted. And then what happens is because every product is kind of getting closer and closer from a technological capability, as Nate mentioned in the survey, that they just kind of switch over to a product that has a better experience or values them. One of the things that we often talk about with the pain points of CX and CS is when customers choose to leave, it's a big decision because they chose to come for a reason. And when they choose to leave, then they're really choosing for an intentional purpose. So anyway, so that kind of gets us started thinking about what are those pain points? What's the most difficult components that we have as leaders? And when I say leaders, that's everybody on the call because you lead where you are, that we have as leaders to really think through the ROI of CX. So one of the big questions is, how do you get started? How do you actually determine the ROI of CX? So I'll start with a story. So when it was 2002, so I was 2002, 2003, I was really early in my career, and I was a forecast analyst. And so I used to do quite a bit of work correlating product data with the likelihood that volume would come from those particular customer experiences. And so we often called that in the old days, we would call that like subscription data or DAO, daily active user, those types of things. And there would be an incident rate, and then there would be behaviors that were outside of the incident rate based off of launch or other things like that. But it got me thinking back in my early 20s of like how if we can correlate this data to predict when customers will contact us, we should be able to correlate this data to be able to get customers to keep coming back, to be loyal, to be sticky, and so forth. So I started thinking through that, and what I found at that point in time was a couple challenges that most of you probably are aware of. The first one is that the correlation component. So APIs were in its very early stages in those days. So being able to correlate two databases was an incredible amount of work. The second point was we just started to see where companies were understanding the value of a unique ID and having a unique ID that could cross all of their databases, that could cross all of their streams and so forth. And so that was the early days. And then it was really the attitude of companies and executives towards the value of experience in CS. So in 2002, 2003, for those of you that were around back in those days, it was really a cost play. Customer service was seen as, oh, I have to spend this money because I don't want to lose the customers. It wasn't seen as, hey, if I invest in my experience, I'm going to get a return. And so really thinking through the how question over the last kind of 20 years, we've started to see technology, attitudinal changes, and the ability to visualize data in a way where we can tell that story now to the executive teams. And so today I'm going to share some easy steps that each of you can take on a day-to-day basis to work with your executive teams, with your product teams, to prove the ROI of CX in your own organization. So to start off with, the first components of our framework is the beginning stages. And we'll share this information later so everyone will have this content to use in your own way. The first thing you have to think through is, what are the 2 to 3 metrics in customer service or customer experience that you think are indicators or potential indicators of loyalty and stickiness? And once you've identified those 2 or 3 indicators, then you have to go to the other side of the organization and work with the product team, the engineering team, and look at the outcome. So how does the company determine success for customers? And that's business outcome. So if you want to correlate your customer service, your customer experience metrics, you need to understand the outcome. So really thinking through and having those conversations of what are the business outcomes. So moving to the middle stages, or the next slide, it really kind of gets you into this ideation session. And each one of these slides could take weeks, could take months, depending on where you are in your maturation. But as you ideate and you start to discuss, it's like you work together with the teams, whether it's inside the CX organization, whether it's inside the product teams, or kind of a cohesion of the two, and talk about, well, how are these metrics being correlated today, or isn't it even possible to correlate these metrics from a technology and analytics standpoint? If it is possible, how strong is the association, or how strong is the correlation of, if you have this metrics, let's say, for example, you might have customer effort score, customer satisfaction, or resolution rate as a metric. How does that correlate to lifetime value, revenue, stickiness, or other product metrics like product usage? How, if you have an app, or if you have a game, how often do they come in and play the game? How long do they play the game? So really thinking through how they are correlated and what the association is going to be critical. And then what that will kind of tease out for you is, what data are you missing? And in some cases, for some organizations, that data is a lot, and it'll take quite a bit of transformation to pull the teams together, to pull the databases together, to introduce a unique ID, to really tie things together from an API. And in some cases, the data is just sitting there and companies haven't connected it yet. And so it's a much simpler process. And so, but whatever that is, figuring out what data is missing is going to be a key component. And then as you think through the middle stages and the ideation stages, then it's all about, how do you expand your voice of the customer, your analytic capabilities to drive that correlation. And then once you expand the ability to track and to correlate, then that really puts you into a position to have a much stronger data story on how those two correlate. And that kind of gets us to the end stages, which is next slide. So as you think through that, then you have to determine what initiatives or what tests do you want to experiment with. In order to prove ROI, you have to be able to do some A/B tests. So it's statistically relevant and proven that the value that you believe that these metrics are providing for the business outcomes is a reality. And so it's been super interesting as we've talked to lots of clients. Almost every client I talk to, they want to prove this out, and they want to know how to prove this, because they know the value of the CX and the services team, and they want to be able to put that into a data framework. So as you think through these A/B tests, if you use resolution rate, as your kind of services metric and use lifetime value or revenue, and you wanted to correlate those two, what you might do is come up with an A/B test where you have a population, a control group that they're handled in a certain way where their resolution rate would increase or would be better than, or the test group, sorry, switch that. So you have the test group that has that, and then the control group would get the normal experience. And then what you do is it usually takes about 3 to 6 months to look at the difference between the control group and the test group. And then you'll be able to identify what impact changing or adjusting the resolution rate has on, in this case, lifetime revenue. That's a very simple example. There's a lot of cool different examples that we can share, time permitting, in the future with you, and you can always reach out to me around that. But the key thing is your first test may or may not prove the results that you want. It may take 2 or 3 or 4 tests, and it may also take a few different metrics and a few different business outcomes to really understand, how you can correlate and create ROI inside of your framework. So I want to share kind of a use case study of how we did this with a customer. Next slide. So essentially, the first way that we wanted to work with this gaming customer was to identify the power of support versus no support. And so what we did is we looked at customers or players that submit tickets or get a customer service or customer experience support, and those that don't. And we looked at it over an 18-month time frame. And what we found is that players that submitted tickets, engaged with customer experience, customer service, had a good experience. They ended up spending about $7 million more than those that didn't. And when you look at it at a holistic standpoint, that represents about 41% of funding the customer service or customer experience team. And what's interesting is when I talk to people about this case study, they're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. You're like almost self-funding half of service. And I'm like, yes, it is. But almost every organization is doing this today. And they just don't know it because they haven't connected the data. They haven't done their experimentations, and they aren't able to tell this data. And once you have that capability to share data that's this strong, then you're able to get a seat at the table and really have meaningful, influential conversations with the product team, with the engineering team. And I think Nate loves it. He's a CXO, the Chief Experience Officer. You're starting to see a lot of companies hiring CXOs because they're understanding that customer service and customer experience can influence the revenue stream and the downstream loyalty metrics by 5, 10, and 15%. So CS protection is one interesting correlation factor. Another correlation factor that you can look at is what's the revenue enablement? There are a lot of great companies out there that we've talked to and that we've worked with where they have white glove services or they have specialized services for certain customers that actually increase loyalty, increase revenue, and so forth. And so it's really exciting that we've been able to prove out the protection side on ROI and also the increase of loyalty and revenue with other customers. So again, this isn't a scientific secret sauce thing from an Officium. This is out there. This is freely given. Everybody should be able to do this. And I wanted to share the model that we've used so everyone has this information. So you can go and start having these conversations with your teams and really prove ROI. Next slide. And so we did want to share some learnings that we had along the way. So you may face some of these learnings. You may face different learnings as well. So as you kind of think through this and have these processes and frameworks with your internal teams, definitely share. But for us, what we found is that most CX and CS organizations, probably not going to be surprised, there's amazing, talented, passionate people that really want to prove their ROI. They want to do what's right for the customer. I mean, being a servant leader, being a servant, Officium, it's Latin for to serve. It's kind of in our DNA, and we know it's in each of your DNA as well. But they need to be able to tell that story to the execs, as we talked about earlier, with data and with anecdote, and be able to correlate it in a way that speak in the language that the power core understands. For this particular client, they were missing some key roles to be able to to deliver that value. In this case, WFM, training, quality, and most importantly, analytics, and that ability to tie activities to value at the analytic level. In addition to that, their technology was a bit siloed. So I talked about earlier about the API connections. Now that that's all available, but you still have to bring your technology together. Your databases have to talk to each other. And then that analytic visualization capability was super critical. And then when you look at kind of automation and you look at your CRM, you need to make sure whatever CRM you're using, it gives you that capability to have the data in there that can talk to other customers. Some CRMs either don't have an open API or their API doesn't speak freely to data visualization kind of products like Tableau, Looker, and so forth. And then the key point is, if you want this to be repeatable, you really have to look at the processes. You have to look at your goals, your KPIs, how the teams operate inside of the service organizations, experience organizations, and then how do they execute and partner with your product teams, your engineering teams, and your executive teams, and are the goals, are they aligned, and then are the leaders aligned, communicating and meeting on a consistent cadence to really talk about what's blocking success, what we can do to enable ROI, what have we learned, and what are the new experiments that we're going to run, because this isn't a one and done kind of thing. You don't run an experiment and now you know your ROI. You run an experiment and then you continue to test that experiment every quarter and find new and different ways to drive ROI. So then you have that consistent value, because just as technology changes, just as all of us change and improve and grow, customers and the way that they decide to be sticky and loyal change too. As Nate noted earlier, 70% of customers are now making changes based off of technology. And 70% of customers believe customer service are the company. So their attitudes and their behaviors are changing too. So these are some cool learnings. I'm sure there's other folks on the stream that have done something similar to this before or have learnings as well. Feel free to drop those in the chat or the comments below. In addition to that, let's go to the next slide. I think this kind of wraps up. What I think is really cool about this framework is that it's a simple framework that anybody can use. We've proven it 5, 6, 7 different times, millions of dollars of revenue and other metrics of loyalty and stickiness. We've proven we know this works. The cool thing that I think is that you now have the API and the technology to use the databases. Your company, some companies aren't using unique IDs today, but unique ID is the best practice. And so working inside of the company, many companies are using a unique digital ID. So being able to tie that data together on the CS and the product together to be able to tell that story. There's a lot of great data visualization capabilities that are out there that can help you tell that story to the executive team. And then I think the last thing is what we have seen is that attitudes have changed over the last 20 years. And a lot of executives, a lot of companies really believe that CX and CS has a lot of power and a lot of influence. And I was talking with a good friend of mine in the past, and we were chatting about what's the biggest struggle with CX getting adopted, much better in companies. And it's really that data. If you talk about big data and you talk about the value that the power cores are interested in the company, and you correlate that value with customer service and customer experience as execution, they're going to open their ears. They're really going to start to listen, and then you're going to be able to have that influence. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity again to celebrate CX Day with you. I think we're going to open it up for some questions, and happy to answer any questions folks have. I think Jason as well shared his 3 things on Slack from earlier, so we can cover that too. But it's just an honor to celebrate CX Day with all of you and to be part of this great revolution that we're all disrupting. Let's all work hard to switch the 339 billion loss, 220 billion invested. Let's switch those numbers to where we're losing much less and we're investing much more, so we drive that ROI. I'll pass over to Nate and Sydney to facilitate, but I'm here to answer any questions that come in.
Jonathan, awesome job.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
That was really great.
Air 5 from coast to coast over here in Nashville. Well done, my friend. Thank you for bringing that wisdom to us.
Yeah.
We definitely do have some questions rolling in. I would just like to say personally how critical this aspect of CX is. There were some scary stats that came out from Gartner. It was about a year and a half ago, and there were some things on Customer Think too, talking about how CX professionals, their tenure was like a year to a year and a half on average, or something really scary like that. And it was because of our inability in this area to demonstrate the value in a clear and compelling way. So, I mean, this is something that we need to get right in order to grow the work, to earn the right to do the work inside of our organizations.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an if, this is a must-have in terms of your ability as a CX professional, in my opinion. And the way Jonathan just laid it out, you're not going to get a clearer way to go about thinking in this manner and excelling in this area, in my opinion.
Yeah. So
Good
true.
stuff. So we do have some questions. What is that first question?
I don't know if we have any questions. Looks like we had a lot of people say thank you so much, Jonathan. Got some claps. Kirsty had some great comments. Calculating CX ROI can sometimes be a challenge because steps towards improving metrics might be expensive or time consuming to implement.
Good comment. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think that's a really critical one. I mean, sometimes hard, critical ROI decisions, they're going to cost money, and you have to change the minds of people, right? And in some companies, they'll be like, hey, I'm willing to spend that $1 million to get the 6 million in return. They're willing to take that risk, right? To make those changes, make those investments. And other companies, they're not, their behaviors or their attitude or perhaps their profit line, they're not willing to do that. And in my opinion, the companies that are willing to take those big steps and invest, whether it's people, process, technology, data, they're the ones that we're going to see shining. Every year I get the top 20 brands, right?
Yeah.
So, and you notice if you've watched that from the 40s, that's changed a lot. Part of that's associated with technology, but part of it's also associated with customer-centric companies. And so the companies that really invest are going to be the companies that we're going to be looking at, we're going to be using, we're going to be engaging and enjoying over the next kind of decade or two.
Love it. Great. Here's a question, Jonathan. So as you speak to executives on this topic, where you're trying to demonstrate the ROI of CX, you've used this model, you have some data. What are some tips in terms of how to talk, how to communicate to that executive?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to understand what's important to them. Like if you look at the business outcomes, which business outcome is most critical to them?
Yeah.
And so then being able to talk in a language of, hey, let's prove out that business outcome can be influenced or can be protected by customer service and customer experience. And then the second piece of advice that I'd give is once you have their ear, because you're talking in their language, then showing them the framework that I shared, showing them the framework of how you could potentially see success, educate them that it may take time, that you may not get it on the first go, right? Because anytime you do A/B testing, it's like anytime you build a product, you never get it the first time. So if you're talking to a product engineering leader, they'll immediately get that it may take a few tries, to get it right.
Yeah.
But educate them that it may take some time, and then also let them know that in some cases it could be easy or it could be hard depending on what technology you have, what resources you have, and what processes are already in place. I mean, you may have to rewrite an enormous amount of your processes. You may have to leave one technology solution and go to the next to be able to get unique ID or to be able to get the API connections, right?
Yeah.
So just educate them that may be the case. But what I often find is most successful is if you make the test statistically relevant but small. So in other words, I think executives and these business leaders, they can absorb small risk. So if you say, hey, this is a small pilot, it's going to be statistically relevant, it's going to get us the information we need to know if we need to scale it. Oftentimes the risk tolerance that executives have is really low in a lot of situations, especially with big companies. Smaller companies, it's a little higher. But if you say, let's start as a pilot, and then if we prove it out, then let's scale it and grow it, then oftentimes executives have an appetite for those types of things.
I love that. I think there's one brilliant piece I want to pull out and make sure everybody heard the idea of involvement of that executive. I think it's one thing if you only talk in terms of results, then all the executive is going to see is you and the results. But if you bring them into the framework and reveal the framework to them and allow them to feel like, oh, we're trying something, we're experimenting together on this. Yeah. They're invested, they're curious. You can never ever overestimate the power of curiosity. And when they get a little flesh in that game, then they feel like they too are invested in helping to accomplish the result.
No, it's totally true. I mean, if you think about it, CX professionals, right? We're like, what's the customer journey? What's that pathway? Well, what's the executive journey to help that customer, right? And so thinking about it as a journey too, I think is super critical.
Love it. Can we bring Dean, if you wouldn't mind? We have the amazing Dean Davis running things backstage. Thank you to Dean. Golf clap to Dean. If you wouldn't mind bringing John back on stage, I'd love for John to be able to react and respond to Jonathan's thing here. Did we get? Oh, hey, there's John.
Hey.
Hey, did you have any thoughts on Jonathan's presentation there?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot within Officium for the last year plus, and I think some of the key elements that really resonate with me are the fundamental approach to doing this work, right? You don't get overburdened with trying to think of, oh my gosh, it's so big, how do I do this? Like, there's some steps that are very logical that you take. And then I think what's key for every CX leader out there, and when I say leader, just like Jonathan mentioned, we're all leaders in some way, it's the art of influence. And really thinking about how to take this information that you gather and then use it to influence the direction of your company into being really more customer centric and customer focused. And I think, bringing those two things together, the fundamental approach with the art of influence, really starts to make a difference for you and your teams and the CX industry all up.
Awesome.
Love that.
Good stuff. Do we have any other questions roll in?
We don't. We have lots of good comments from Jason. Hello, welcome, Jerome from Brazil. Kirsty, fundamentals, keep it simple. I love that.
Excellent. Well, Jonathan, you knocked it out of the park. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Any closing thoughts before you jump off stage there?
I mean, I think the only thing I'd say is, sometimes it'll be easy, sometimes it'll be hard. If you have any questions after the, CX day, like I said, John said, we celebrate CX every day at Officium. So if there's any questions or for any quandaries that you have, I'm happy to connect with people. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, so just feel free to message me. I'd love to spend some time. I love talking about this stuff, as my team knows. This is my joy, spending time with customers, helping them think through how to build value in the customer service and customer experience arena. Again, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit of kind of the cool things that we're doing around ROI of CX. I'm excited to hear what the rest of the speakers have said. Thanks for all the wonderful comments and the questions from the viewers. It's been amazing to have you. And Jerem, it's good to see you again, my friend. All right, everyone, I'll see you later, and I'll be on the rest of the stream in the back. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
And for anyone who is watching the replay or just tuned in halfway, we will have this recorded and live on YouTube, so you can always go back and rewatch. And if you did register, we'll be sure to send you that presentation as well, along with all the materials that Jonathan covered in his presentation, so you can go back and make those edits that he suggested. So
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that all went off without a hitch. The last time I coordinated an event with Jonathan, I made a grievous time zone error, and he was already getting up at 6:30 to do a presentation in Europe. There was some special time zone consideration I didn't know about. Turns out his presentation, he needed to get up at 5:30 for that.
AM,
yeah. And he did get up and jumped in and just crushed that keynote. So well done to Jonathan, and I still feel so bad for that. But great stuff. So, okay, we have Michelle Lee. We went back, we looked at some of the tweets and some of the comments. We would love to give you a gift card. We just thank you so much. We want to celebrate with you for your great comment on some of the things that you learned last year. So we're excited with you, and congratulations, Michelle Lee. So we've got a $100 Amazon card for you. And also for Sherry Kendall, great comment from Sherry around empathy. And she asked this great question of how do we inspire agents to offer empathy when they are at unprecedented levels of exhaustion. And I happen to know Sherry, and I know that you, Sherry, are an expert in this area. Would love for you to link out to the training course that you recently produced on this. That would be great if folks could have access to that. I wish we could pull you on stage. We don't have the ability to do that. I'm going to do my best to answer this, but another reason I wanted to pull John up is because, John, I feel like you're exceptionally gifted in this area of empathy, and you have a philosophy of trust that I think is applicable here that I would love for you to share. But as far as for me, in terms of how to equip agents with empathy when they have just unprecedented levels of exhaustion here, I mean, you get to be a wellspring to them. As Steve Gutzler would say, a wonderful executive coach, you are a fountain input to your people. If you want them spilling over with positive energy, you've got to be bringing water into them, the same kind of water that you want flowing out. That is very pleasing to the eye and that smells right. And that water can be easily contaminated by just one or two inputs that is capable of contaminating that fountain. So you want to help your people to protect those. They are a fountain towards your customers. So analyze those inputs that are coming into them. Help them to curate really good, positive fountain inputs and be one to them. And I think that'll make the biggest difference. They need to be able to trust you. Empathy cannot be faked. I think fake empathy is one of the most disgusting things.
Yeah.
It just grates you.
Yeah.
But if somebody believes that the company has their back, that you as a leader have their back, that's going to get them through the day and give them something special that they can give to customers hour after hour, even as they fight the exhaustion of their shifts and other things. But John, I'd love for you to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I mean, two things really come in mind there, and I'm scribbling down some notes so I don't forget either one. So the first one you mentioned a little bit earlier, Nate, we operate by the concept of win or learn. And I think it's very important as leaders in this industry to really, when you engage with your teams, have that win or learn mentality. People are not doing things wrong or bad intentionally, right? It's like you win in that interaction, you win in that engagement, or you're learning from it. And so we all need to be coaches. So that empathy needs to be really true and real. And we need to coach people to help them learn from the experiences that they're operating in, because many experiences change each day. So win or learn, I think, is something that is really valuable that as leaders, we all need to practice. But the second you mentioned earlier about like my approach to trust. A lot of people talk about earning trust. I believe in granting trust. And so the approach I take with people is I grant trust. I'm going to trust that people are going to do the right thing for the right reason. And I'm going to operate that way. And if I see that something is not going the way that I would expect it, then I engage, I ask questions, and then together we win or learn together. And so really taking that approach of granting trust, people are going to feel that. They're going to feel from the engagement that you bring to them, that you trust in them and you're empowering them to do what is right. And 9 out of 10 times, if not more than that, people are going to do what's right. At least they're going to put the effort forth. And so, I think there's some things that as leaders and as CX industry professionals, when we interact with customers, like, let's trust those customers. I know sometimes we get in those situations to where we think about fraud and are they trying to play a game on me? But, let's win and learn. Let's trust and learn. And as we learn and as we get more data and information, we can make some changes that minimize those types of fraudulent interactions. But win or learn and grant that trust.
I love that, John. I mean, that's meant so much to me, just working with you and under you. I mean, that's been phenomenally freeing to have that granted. I've felt that, and I've been able to reciprocate that. I feel like the first 15 seconds of a customer service interaction are by far the most critical, because at that point, the customer is going to know if you're there to be an impediment to their success, or if you're going to grant them some trust and work with them in partnership to get to a resolution. They can feel that immediately. Yeah. So we have to be the ones to set the tone for that and to establish that idea of trust. And empathy can flow from that. If we don't have trust, there is no empathy. Yeah. There's no understanding that can occur. So it begins with trust, and then it builds towards empathy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Great question. So we have a gift card for Sherry too. We love that comment. Thank you so much, Sherry, for that. Great stuff. So I think we have another activity that we're going to do quickly here.
Yeah.
Do we have time for that?
We do.
Okay. I'm going to save that because
Okay.
I do think, yes, it is time to welcome my friend. And if you want to have another person who is very gifted and knowledgeable on this topic of ROI of CX, look up on LinkedIn, #CX rant. And this was about one of the first days I met Mary, and I asked her to do a CX rant in downtown Nashville, and she picked the topic of ROI of CX, and she crushed it. And I knew that we were going to be friends for life after that. So hello, Mary. How's it going over there?
Hi, Nate. Hi, Sydney. How are you?
Hi, Mary. I'm good. We're so excited to have you here.
This is
Mary-
a little bit. See if we can get that on.
So that everybody knows, Mary sent me a text this morning that she was near death from
Near
illness.
death. Near death.
And I told her, that's unfortunate. Please don't die. You're on at 11 o'clock.
I'm gonna try to get this to.
I was going to say, what better way, though? I mean, the dedication from Mary. So we
Thank you, Mary.
deeply appreciate you being here. You guys are in for a treat. We've seen this presentation ahead of time, and we're super excited. So we'll let you take it away, Mary. I'll be sharing my screen for you for your presentation, and I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, don't worry too much.
If I can get my camera to
There it
go,
is.
it
That
doesn't
is
seem like
adequately
it's.
focused.
Oof, it doesn't
you-
seem like it's going here.
That's all right, Mary. You're just going to be little.
Yeah.
So your presentation will be big. So if we could just get
Okay,
you in the
wow.
camera. There we go.
Let's do it. We're gonna get it. It's gonna come.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
That'll work.
I'm like in bed. Let's go. Let's do this.
I feel
Okay.
like this is an accurate representation of the past year of
Yeah,
working from
this
home
is
and figuring it out. I love it.
Mary's doing
Well,
it.
I haven't been working from home. I've been working from the office. So today is actually a weird day because unlike everybody else, I'm not actually used to working from home. So, but now that I'm sick, I'm kind of having to wing it. And clearly I suck at working from home. So I'm going to try not to do this that often.
You got it.
Love
You
it.
got it. Well, Dean, if we could
Okay.
go ahead and bring that up for us on the presentation there, that'd be awesome.
Pulling it up for you, Mary.
Well, here we go. So the topic when Nate invited me, thank you, Nate, and thank you, Sydney, and thank you to everybody at Officium Lab for putting on the CX Day. It feels like CX Day has lost so much of its luster since we've all been locked in our respective homes and cities, et cetera, and we haven't been able to get together. And the last CX Day I did was in Nashville in person with Nate, and it was really exciting. And we were hoping that we could bring some of that in-person magic to you again this year. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. So fingers crossed for CX Day 2022. But what I wanted to bring to the table today as something that requires a lot of focus in the day and age that we are two really important aspects of customer experience and technology. And it's truly the marriage between these two topics. And these two things, even though they may seem unrelated and most people wouldn't put them together because they're almost an oxymoron if you think about it, ultimately at the end of the day, they marry quite well and walk hand in hand beautifully. And these two things are empathy, like you guys were talking about right before I came on, and artificial intelligence. Now, here's the interesting thing. We all know that this industry is not perfect. And what we need to do is look to technology to help us solve the issues, not only of the present, but of the future as well. Because one thing we know for sure is that the market is going to continue to progress and innovation is going to continue to hurdle new technology and new things at us in all directions. And we all know that consumers, they're not only looking at our specific market to actually deliver on their expectations, they're looking at everything. So with the rest of the market progressing, we can't be silly enough to think that customers are going to be tolerant of customer experience not progressing and not evolving. So the interesting thing is when we look at what empathy is, it comes from the Greek which means in, and pathos, which means feelings. So the idea is that you have that connection of being inside of feelings. And while it's a very, very human trait, so very much that it is maybe considered the apex of human emotion, because it's the number one toolbox, the number one tool in the toolbox for us to communicate with others, because it grants us the gift to put ourselves in the other's shoes, to feel what they feel, to know what they know, to need what they need. And normally, in most cases, empathy is established when we're able to sit down with somebody, look at them in the eye, and have a conversation. Right? So when we listen to someone's pains, their frustrations, their goals, and their dreams, well, this most commonly occurs in that intimate one-on-one setting. Because when we open a two-way line of communication with a person, we picture ourselves in their place. We imagine how we would deal with those challenges and which solutions could potentially solve those challenges to make our lives easier. Let's go to the next slide right there. But if we were to apply empathy to a business perspective and understand what that would look like, well, a company that's empathetic with its customers is one that understands the needs, the desires, and the expectations that customers have regarding their experience with a company. Now, this company, in turn, will create processes and avenues to be able to live up to those expectations the best they can. Now, it's no secret, truly, that many companies all around the world acknowledge the importance of empathy and do their best to put it into practice through active voice of customer programs that prompt customers for their feedback through either satisfaction surveys, NPS, or even others. But the current methodologies that are on the market right now and the tech platforms that they are hosted on are not actually capable of holding these one-on-one empathetic conversations with customers. So how can we have that element of one-on-one conversation, but at scale, in order to talk to our hundreds, our thousands, or even millions of customers? Well, this is the best time to usher in number 2, which is artificial intelligence. Let's go to the next slide. Now, artificial intelligence, everybody knows what artificial intelligence means. In general, it's pretty well known, especially in the tech field, and most people here are somehow involved in technology. But there may be a couple of things that I'm going to talk about in this presentation that you're not familiar with yet. So AI is the theory and the development of computer systems that are capable of executing functions that would normally require human intelligence, right? Now, these highly intelligent systems, let's go to the next slide, I think. These highly intelligent systems are capable of handling enormous data sets and making extremely complex calculations at a really high speed. Because when most folks in technology are talking about AI, they are in fact referring to machine learning. And machine learning is a sequence of algorithms that learns from data as opposed to learning from rules, like in programming. So when you've got a programmer that sits down and writes a program, they're actually writing rules into a computer, which that algorithm then follows. Machine learning is different because it learns from data. So in order to perform a task, it has to be fed data. So when that data is fed into the machine, it trains the machine to identify the same types of data on their own. So for example, a machine can be trained to identify a tree by looking at thousands of pictures that have previously been identified by a human as trees. Now, machine learning is nothing without training, and a lot of people don't know this. Now, you have most probably been training a machine in many aspects of your life, and you haven't even realized it. So the next slide, you know, when you're trying to access your email and you get things wrong a couple of times and you get these little captcha squares there that you have to click on all of the pictures that contain a traffic light in order to prove that you aren't a robot. Well, in fact, what you're doing is training a machine to recognize different objects. Most of the time, you're training a machine to recognize objects that would be necessary in self-driving cars, which is why it's normally traffic lights or bicycles or crosswalk or anything of the sort. You are training that machine by telling it what you are seeing in those images. Now, next slide. Replicating at scale or being trained to perform tasks within specific guidelines at an exponential level. Now, that is the superpower of machine learning. And that's why everyone is so blown away with it, and why everyone believes that it's going to take us to the next level of technology. Because imagine taking a task that would take a human pressing a button 1,000,000 times. The machine can do that in a matter of seconds, as long as they've been trained correctly. Right? So training an algorithm to perform a task at a level that human beings are incapable of, that makes it ridiculously scalable. And anything that we apply this technology to will, in fact, be highly scalable, as long as it receives the right training and guidelines. So if you think about it and you connect the idea of empathy that we discussed before with the technology behind artificial intelligence, if we were to train the machine to talk and listen to customers' pains and needs, then wouldn't we be able to achieve empathy at scale? So in the next slide, when it comes to human beings, emotions are a central component of intelligence. And that means that for any AI to truly mimic human intelligence, it will have to be empathetic. But this AI would have to both sense and express emotions and personality. So where do we stand in the advancements of artificial intelligence, and how close are we to creating empathetic artificial intelligence? Well, let's look at the 4 stages of AI that exist, okay? Reactive machines, limited memory, theory of mind, and self-awareness. Now, in stage 1, reactive machines, the machine reacts. We have to go back to that first, all the way back in the slides. There, stay right there. When it comes to reactive machines, all the machine is doing is reacting to the present world without any concept of past. It simply calculates possible future moves based on the current scenario with no external influences. And in stage 2, which is limited memory, that's when the AI is able to accumulate learning. It means that the AI is considering fragments of the past in order to predict future movements. Now, this is the stage of AI that we are at right now. So when you think of the most advanced artificial intelligence out there, the only thing they're capable of doing is looking into fragments of past to make future projections. The third and penultimate stage of AI development is called theory of mind, and it is based on a concept of the same name in psychology, and it refers to a science that people, creatures, and objects have thoughts and emotions that affect their own behavior. Now, at this stage, the machine would be able to factor in the world around it into its equations. Now, this is the stage that many people around the world are questioning whether we actually want to go there, because that is when the machine has awareness. Now, it's slight awareness that then gets upgraded in stage 4. which is called self-awareness. And this is when the machine would have intelligence comparable to that of human beings. So it takes the theory of mind, where it's aware of how it influences everything around it, and takes it to a level of, I am a part of this and I interact with it. So it perfects its concept of the world and creates and develops feelings and emotions. Now that would classify as a perfectly empathetic AI. Let's go to the next stage. So you can't have empathetic AI without at least having theory of mind. And in fact, there are plenty of arguments about not ever going there, because as a race that wants to survive and continue without the Terminator coming to murder us all, we don't even know if we want to go there. We don't know if we want AI to be the same as humans. So in fact, we don't need a perfectly empathetic AI to start revolutionizing the way that companies interact with their customers. Next slide, because you see, although AI does not yet have the power of empathy, what it does have, and which is the most important thing, is that it gives the power of empathy at scale to those using it correctly. And this is how AI can be used to improve customer experience at scale. Let's go to the next slide. Now, think about it this way. If you had the power to touch a customer's life, sit down and have a conversation one-on-one with them, wouldn't you, as a customer experience professional, be able to understand them, hear from them, listen to their pains, listen to their needs, and be motivated to do something about it? Imagine being able to do that with all of your customers. So that's the superpower of connecting empathy with artificial intelligence. It gives the company an opportunity to feel what all of their customers feel, to experience the pains of these customers, to know what they need, to understand what motivates and drives them to make their decisions. So AI can already be used, and it's already being used to improve customers' lives all around the world. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about Cogito. And Cogito is an AI that was developed by Humana Pharmacy. And excuse me, still dying. And what this AI does is it was created for customer service centers. Let's go to the next slide. And it assists the agents that are on the phone with customers that are calling in with issues. And what it does is it listens to the conversation that the customer service agent is having with the customer and helps them be more empathetic. So it listens to behavior patterns in the voice, such as a long pause or an accelerated speech, or even an altered voice. And it sends messages to the agent saying, hey, you're talking too fast, or try to be more empathetic. Put yourself in your customer's shoes. This customer is struggling right now. So it really taps into the emotions of that service agent to try to get them to connect one-on-one with that customer. Let's go to the next slide. So even though that's beautiful technology, and for all the call center people who are out here, and I know there are probably a couple, that seems wonderful because it allows you to connect with your customers at a one-on-one level, but it's still only allowing you to do that one customer at a time. That's still something that happens when the call center agent is speaking to the customer on the telephone or in the chat or wherever. So is it possible for us to use artificial intelligence at scale with tons of customers at the same time, holding these conversations or listening and talking simultaneously, but then being able to extract that information to also plan strategic investments and the direction of companies at a C-suite level? Let's see the next slide. So, in fact, when it comes to decision making and understanding what's driving customers' decisions, AI can help with that as well. Because if it's empathetic and it is able to speak to everybody and understand why everyone is making their decisions, it provides the executive suite with a blueprint on how to best make decisions. So imagine knowing as a leader in an organization exactly what makes your customers tick, exactly what it is that's making them not want to do business with you anymore and leave you for the competition, or in fact, what makes them stay with you and what makes them continue to do business with you over and over again. Because they can tell you, oh, it's because everybody is so nice. Oh, because it's so good. But is that in fact the one thing? Is there a deal breaker in there? Is there something that they're not telling you at that moment, but that an empathetic conversation could actually figure out? So in the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about my company and the company that I work in, because it's the most in-depth knowledge that I have about empathetic AI and how that's already helping companies have empathy at scale. Next slide. So I work for Worthix, and Worthix is a platform for having empathetic one-on-one conversations with customers. Now, excuse me, we developed an AI and we call it Lucy. And Lucy is right in the next slide, and it explains what that name means, because Lucy stands for listen, understand, converse, and improve. One more slide over, sorry. Now, the idea behind it is that after dialoguing with customers and understanding their motivators, it would then pull all of this data into its algorithms and calculate what sort of impact that's having on customers' decisions. So by using advanced statistical models and natural language processing, which is basically a way to interpret written language, Lucy is able to dialogue directly with customers to identify the pain points in their experiences, the customer's perceptions of values, and in fact, the driving force behind their decision. And it's able to determine and actually pinpoint on a very precise level which customer experiences and perceptions have the highest probability of impacting your customer's decision to buy from you or not. Let's go to the next slide. So when you listen, understand, converse, and improve, what are you able to do? It gives the company the power to quickly transform voice of customer feedback into actionable intelligence that's ready to be implemented and executed across the entire company for all of your customers. So Worthix is simply one example of a company that's using empathetic AI to directly affect how customers feel and experience a brand. But next slide. All in all, when we look at the general scenario of technological advancements that we have right now and where companies are going and how they're looking into improving their customer experiences, even though we're really excited about the future potential of technology, the greatest value that we extract from AI today, with its developmental limitations, is the ability that it gives us to use data to understand our customers' needs, desires, perceptions, frustrations, and ultimately their expectations. And it empowers teams and executives all over the company to change the way that the company creates plans and delivers experiences to all of their customers at scale. So let's look at that last slide right there. I got to keep going at this point. So even though I am speaking to you today from my deathbed, hopefully I will survive this and come back stronger. And hopefully next year in 2022, we'll be together again, hopefully in person, so that we don't have to work on pressing slides and connections and webcams, because I'm very, very bad at all of this stuff. But I wanted to thank everybody over at Officium Lab. I wanted to thank Nate. I wanted to thank John Pompei, Jonathan Shroyer, Sydney Delgado, for all of the hard work that you guys had in putting everything together. And if you are interested in learning more about empathetic artificial intelligence and you want to talk to me in person, you can contact me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or anywhere else. And yeah, that's all I have to say today. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mary. My goodness, if that's your mind when it isn't sharp. That's
Dying,
pretty
literally.
intimidating.
Sorry.
Hey, good news. So Officium decided we're all going to chip in. We're going to transport your consciousness into an AI. So you're now going to be Mary, the AI, and you can just let your body go forth into the ether.
That would be amazing. But just make sure that when you write out Mary, it's got dots between, so it looks really technological. So it's like Mary. Yeah, and it could be like movement, action, responses, and Y. And that's what it stands for.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mary. Great. That was a challenging presentation. Yeah. This is probably one of those topics that a lot of CX professionals are really intimidated of it. I know I have been. I'm not by any means there, but I've definitely challenged myself over these past 3 years to try to catch up with what's going on in this area. And it's so important to do so. Voice of customer is rapidly changing. Traditional voice of customer is not going to cut it in terms of asking our customers on surveys how they think maybe their experience was, what experience are we talking about, when, it's all moving way forward, way faster in terms of AI reaching into those interactions and being able to show you very clearly, as Mary stated, here's what really truly matters, and taking a lot of the guesswork out of VOC. So thank you so much, Mary. We do have a couple quick questions for you before you perish.
Before going into the questions, I think the important part truly is the element of doing it at scale. So, an example that I'm constantly giving, and I think I said it throughout the presentation if my memory is still working, but it is technically easy. Like if you think of a mom and pop shop, think of a store owner and somebody walks into their shop and says, you know what, I'm having a really hard time in here. I don't know where things are. And they can look you straight in the eye and tell you everything they need, tell you why their experience is good, why it's bad, and what they would need you to do in order to improve that experience. And that's possible when you're small. It's possible when you're on a one-on-one level. But imagine taking that and growing it to a corporation that's got millions of customers, and so we're really quick in this industry to badmouth companies that somehow aren't getting it right. But we forget that they've got millions of customers. And each of those million customers have their own individual needs, their own individual pains, their own individual struggles. And it's currently, a couple years ago, it was absolutely impossible for a company to understand all of those needs at the same time. But now it's possible with artificial intelligence because we can create that empathy at scale. And that is the key element. Yeah.
Intimidating and exciting. So we have a great question from Kirsty. Thank you, Kirsty.
Yeah, she says, when it comes to support, what matters most for your customers? AI can be integrated into your CS team and support workflows to deliver on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the use that I gave, the example that I gave with Cogito is a really good use of AI. But another good use is to create some sort of triage where before you actually speak to an agent, it's able to put you in the right place. The important part is that you create the right expectation in your customer for dealing with an AI instead of dealing with a human. So especially when it comes to chatbots, etc., almost every problem can be solved as long as you're able to create the correct expectations to avoid the creation of gaps. So if a customer thinks they're going to speak to a person, but they end up speaking to a super duper limited chatbot that is essentially just responding to stimulus with very limited ability to interact and help, then that's not going to be something that's going to be considered empathetic at all. In fact, it's going to be considered the opposite. Yeah. It's going to be considered some sort of stall tactic for you to get your ducks in order. So I think that the most important use of machine learning right now when it comes to assisting agents in customer service and customer care is in the possibility to sort people individually into the right place before speaking to an agent, resolving the small manual tasks that don't require the empathy of an individual. And like in the example that I gave, where it's giving cues to the agent to remind them to be empathetic in case for some reason they're struggling with their compassion and their empathy at that moment.
Love it.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Oh, well, we have another one already. Regarding burnout and empathy, I heard an executive said she takes 30 minutes of customer calls per week to show her team she's in the trenches with them, also to connect with her customers. So one leader who's not giving it all to the AI and making sure that she's retaining that perception, which I think is very important. One additional question for you, Mary. For a CX professional who's looking to put their feet into this deep pool for the first time, maybe it's intimidating for them, what would you recommend in terms of the first step to educate themselves and to start to wrap their mind around this deep trough of VOC so that they can have more confidence as they wade into the water?
Well, you've got two options. Excuse me, and sorry. Option number one is for you to go all the way back and study the history of marketing research and surveys and everything, learn everything that there is to know, come up to date, and start evolving from here. That's one option. And it's a good option because it gives you a really robust understanding and a good historical reference of the mistakes that were made in the past and how not to repeat them. The other option is that you can come in with a fresh outside perspective, which I truly think is beautiful, to be honest. Yeah. And instead of concerning yourself so deeply with everything that was done in the past, you can look straight into the future and you can challenge the best practices and the established way of doing things nowadays and shake things up a bit. So I don't believe that it's necessary to do the same thing that everybody else is doing to get it right. In fact, I believe the opposite. I believe that as a human being in the professional market of today, where technology is evolving a little every second, if we're going to stick to the way that things were done in the past and what historically may not be amazing, but kind of generates results, if we're going to stick to those things instead of challenging ourselves to go into the uncharted and provide the market with new ways of helping people, I mean, you're missing out. You're missing out on that great opportunity. So for people who are stepping in now, Sydney's a great example. Sydney's an example coming from the market, going straight into customer experience. That's really good advice that I gave you right there myself, Sydney. Just dive ahead into the future. You can take things from here forward. You don't have to back.
Yeah. Love it, Mary. Well, I think you're going to make it. My gut tells me.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much for making the sacrifice this morning. I know you did not feel well, and you still crushed it and challenged all of us greatly in this area of voice of customer. We are so appreciative.
Yeah. Thanks,
well,
Mary.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure. Officium has felt like my second home for these past 2 years. I'm a proud board member. I sit on the advisory board and try to every once in a while give my 2 cents about how I see the world and how I see the future of customer experience. And it's so beautiful for me that you guys are putting this on and bringing knowledge and experience and insight into the lives of so many people on today, which is such a special day.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate it. All right. So we're going to move to, I believe, a 5-minute break.
Yes. So for anyone who, again, tuned in halfway or missed a little bit of that presentation, no worries. This will be up for replay, and we will also be emailing out everyone that registered a copy of that presentation as well. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will see you back in 5 minutes.
Thanks, everybody. See you in a minute. Well, hello, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying our CX Day celebration so far. Thank you so much to Mary for giving us that really challenging and great voice of customer presentation. I've got another challenge for you, an area that I've really been convicted on of late. I've been learning as much as I can about this topic and seeing it played out in the lives of many customers around me. And it's one that I may be introducing you to today, or perhaps it's something that you've already been seeing and feeling out in the space. And hopefully this will just serve to help validate it and help you along this path of what I've been calling mission-driven CX. So let's go ahead and jump into that presentation here. So mission-driven CX, it's really this idea that people want to do business with organizations that resonate with the same core values that they have as individuals, as people. And they're gravitating towards these brands. Let's go and go to that next slide here. So what does that look like? And how can we tap in to this great thing that's going on, this new trend that's happening in the CX world for many for the first time, whereas many others, perhaps in decades past, they've been convicted in this area. But now it's starting to surface as a mainstream thing that's going on and that CX professionals need to be able to identify and recognize. So I am the CXO of Officium Labs. I just love this work of customer experience. It is dear to my heart. And I came from a customer service background and was just taking a whole bunch of phone calls and tickets day in and day out. And finally one day it was kind of like, it'd be great if we could maybe solve some of these problems instead of answering the same questions again and again. It's like, what is the name for that? And I didn't know it at the time, but it was customer experience and this idea of leveling up our understanding of our customers, reducing the friction from the journeys that they're experiencing that we're giving to them. And ever since then, have just been on this path of loving this work of CX and learning and growing with those around me in this great profession. So jumping in here, life is made up of experiences. I mean, I think Jonathan made that clear. I think Mary's making that clear as the world moves more and more into this unknown digital realm. It's still very much the case in terms of life being the building block of so many of the things that we do experience every day are listed here. I mean, we have this idea of brand experience coming together with employee experience and coming together with customer experience and patient experience. And one that is very near and dear to Officium, player experience. Such a robust and dynamic cycle is that. And so when we merge these things together and really be able to look at experience design on a macro level, the principles still apply. And we can take so many of the things that we're learning in these different areas of digital experience and brand experience and employee experience and apply them universally to these other areas and really be able to advance and excel. So it's great. I think it's wonderful how this work is coming together. It is a little intimidating. And being a chief experience officer who has responsibilities in a lot of these different areas, certainly brand experience and learning experience and employee experience and customer experience. I have responsibilities into each of those four areas strongly. And it's a lot to juggle, but there's so much harmony there. There's so much opportunity to bring consistency to those things. And as we bring consistency to the type of experiences that our organization generates, it makes us more relatable as an organization. So moving on to that next slide. So just thinking at a macro level, I want to step back quickly here and just think about, it's CX Day. Let's dream a little bit about the things that are going on in this space. And Mary has taken us deeply down this path of digital experience and the things that are coming and how that is no longer something that we can, maybe tap into or explore as an optional thing. It is table stakes as a CX professional that we lock in on the digital experience opportunities that are there. Customers expect it. In order to scale and to be sustainable in this area, we have to have our tool sets be friction-free and locked in and harmony in terms of the information flowing through those tool sets and our capabilities there in the area of voice of customer and self-service. These things have to happen. So there's still so much work to be done there. And then mission-driven CX, I put in the middle as kind of the heart, the mentality that we bring to this. And then another really great, exciting trend that I'm seeing out there is this rise of customer success. this idea of maximizing customer value through partnership, and how exciting that is, that we're not just doing traditional sales and marketing anymore. We're earning the right to grow value inside of the customers that we serve. And that's fueling the engine of acquisition and sales. It's a new way of thinking about sales and marketing. And I just think it's wonderful. I think it's one of the great evolutions that has happened in this age of the customer that we're still very much in. And we're just going to see that more and more growing and taking shape. But what is that heartbeat, that mentality that we can bring to these exciting things that are going on the left and right? So let's drill in a little bit more to mission-driven CX. And I put the iconic choppy waters here. I mean, this is a representation of the work and the mentality that we're entering into as we come into 2022. This is going to be another choppy year, everybody. We know this. It's going to be tough, but we absolutely can navigate these choppy waters, especially as we unify and bring others into the work with us. The larger our ship is, the more capable the ship is, the greater chance of survival that we have in terms of navigating these waters. So let's get off our little John boat that we're sitting on by ourselves, trying to push CX principles out there into the world and just getting frustrated when nobody is coming onto our little John boat. Let's step on to the cruise ship together and infect the cruise ship with this great mentality of CX and make that work theirs, not just ours as CX professionals. Moving on to that next slide there. So I was looking everywhere, doing all the Googling that I could in this area of mission-driven CX. What is it? What does it mean out there? And how much impact is this having on loyalty? And there's not much. There's not much information that is out there. So I went ahead and did an organic poll on LinkedIn to understand, is this entering in as a loyalty driver that really matters, that we need to take homage of, that we need to recognize as a main driver of loyalty that's out there. And so I looked at 4 areas. I inquired as to these 4. I did price and value. I did relationship with the brand. I did this idea of mission-driven CX, so the values and the principles of the brand. And I just put consistent service. Didn't even put good service, just consistent service. And I was amazed at how many people still responded to this idea of consistent service. I mean, this has been a trend that's been out there ever since 2011 and before, when CEB came out with their brilliant work, The Effortless Experience. And this idea of effort reduction and resolution and providing great service. And the fact that we had that stat when we kicked off, that people are recognizing customer service as the brand more than any other function of the company. It just goes to show how critical that still is as a loyalty driver. But I was heartened to see that the idea of mission-driven CX and the values and the mission of the organization is not only on the map, but it was a solid 10% there of people recognizing that as a primary loyalty driver for them in terms of the way that they behave as a consumer, as a customer. So I feel like that's gonna continue to increase. We're gonna see that continue to rise because of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, we see people gravitating towards organizations and people and other things that resonate with them in terms of the core values that they have, the impact that they want to make on the world. People aren't just going to go out and spend money because it's the best price anymore. That is very clearly represented in this information. It is way more about the why and what is happening as I feel this organization, as I give them the gift of my time, my energy, and my money. What is being done with that gift? And that is a question that all of us need to have answered. And it's a question that a CX professional generally gets to help to answer. Not alone, but very much is going to be the driving force behind the understanding of that why. Let's go to that next slide there. You recognize this person. So Mary had a brilliant commentary around mission-driven CX. And so I would love for you to read that there. I'm afraid I can't quite. Let me try here. So I'm going to get to the punchline around the fact that the way that we're socially perceived, how we're socially perceived based on the brands we buy from and what they stand for is a strong indicator of where we're going to spend our money. I mean, you can see how much data Mary has to work with as she validates this idea of mission-driven CX. The social perceptions that are being generated on our decisions that we make as customers, those are tremendous decisions. And so we need to understand where those are coming from and making sure that we're putting out the correct perception of who we are as an organization so that we're attracting and keeping loyal as many customers as we can. Well, let's move to that next slide there. Thank you, Mary, for those great quotes. So I'm recently having a conversation with my wife as a consumer, as somebody who is trying to apply my money towards different brands, and we're trying to make this decision. And it was a tough one. We're struggling to understand which brand is going to be the best. And she made this brilliant statement. She's getting a little frustrated just trying to make these choices. And she said, you know, it's just so hard to know what to do with our life and our time and our money. I was like, whoa, let me capture that, because that right there is a tweetable moment. Because I mean, that really is the lens that we view so much of this through. As customers, we're looking at it through our life. What gives us life? What type of life do we want to create for others around us? Who else is thinking that way and is trying to create that type of life? The time, I mean, as we can see from that last poll, people so value their time. People are exhausted. People are trying to do so much to balance their jobs and their families and their hobbies and so many things. And their time is very, very valuable. When we honor that as an organization, it is a tremendous loyalty driver. And then, of course, money does very much matter. And that's going to enter into this value equation and steer us towards a particular brand that will represent a good value for the money that we have. But people are looking at it through this lens of life first, then time, then last, money. Let's move to that next slide there. So how do we create a mission-driven brand that's going to jump off the page and attract customers to us that are going to be aligned to the way that we're contributing out into the world, the brand promise that we're making and ultimately fulfilling through great CX. So it begins with the company identity, of course. Who are we? And then we're going to talk about breaking those CX silos to make it more consistent in terms of that personality and who we are. Then we're going to look at starting inside the house and bringing consistency and harmony to that aspect. And then ultimately, the metaphor that I keep using with this is lighting the beacon. As we light the beacon of mission-driven CX, we are bringing the right people inside of the company and bringing customers to us like never before, like moths to the flame. And it's so powerful when we're able to light this beacon in a way that can be seen across the mountains of Gondor for the Lord of the Rings geeks out there. Let's go to that next slide. All right, so company identity. So what are we looking for here as we think about company identity? Go ahead and go to that next one, Sid. And there's a great resource that HBR helps to get us thinking about this, and it's this idea of a company identity matrix. And there's so many great things that are embedded into this. But ultimately, in the middle of what we're looking at there is the brand core. What do we promise? And what are the core values that sum up what our brand stands for? I mean, that right there is what we're trying to arrive at. And all these things around the edges will help us to navigate there and get us to that core place. But right now, as a CX professional, if you're operating in such a way where you don't have that brand core, if that promise has not been made clear, you are not able to move forward yet in this area. It is required in order to have that clarity, to have that promise isolated, and to be able to understand that question of who you are and who you're serving and how you're serving them. So, I mean, this is something that you should absolutely show to an executive team and get clarity on these questions. It is something that we've had to go through inside of Officium, and we've been able to do that, though it was difficult. It was so necessary, and it was somewhat natural, because even as the derivative of this organization was there with Jonathan and Scott as they co-founded it, there was great clarity and great harmony there. And as we've scaled up, we've been able to serve more and do more and in different ways, which has been really great and exciting, but able to retain and stay true to that brand core. It's really quick and easy for organizations to lose that core and lose focus on those things that are very compelling and very clear in terms of that brand promise. At that moment, you are unrelatable. We as people want to do business with organizations that we can feel and trust like people. And the only way that we could trust an organization and relate to them like another person is if that consistency is there. Across that customer journey, they are true to that brand core. The brand promise is very obvious. And the ways that they're delivering that and speaking in their brand voice, it is consistent across the organization. That is such an amazing loyalty driver when we could feel that and sense that and be a part of that. We know that company. We know how they're going to react and respond. And we trust them for it, which is awesome. Let's go to that next slide, Sid. So my favorite CX author, as mentioned, and I would say Denise Yohn is the one who originally woke me up to this concept in 2018 with Fusion. And just a brilliant quote here: customers are more savvy today. They see advertising rhetoric for what it is. They no longer accept the brand at face value. They are skeptical about the claims the companies make. They want authenticity, brands that live up to their promises and stated ideals. So there are stated ideals. First of all, I feel like historically companies would just not state ideals because it was too risky. Now it's way too risky not to, because you're unrelatable. We don't know what your ideals are. So those ideals need to be stated. But then we as CX professionals and marketing professionals, we get to isolate the brand promise and we get to deliver on it. And there's magic that comes out of this when those two things come together and happen in harmony. We are building trust. We are building loyalty. And we are breaking the sins of the fathers in the past of traditional marketing, where people were just making promises left and right, spewing out rhetoric, and not even really caring if the organization could or would deliver on that. It was all about the marketing engine. Those days are gone. It is now about the clarity of the brand promise and the ability for the customer to deliver on that, to see it, to feel it, and the organization to back it up with great CX. Awesome. So as we think about the culture that has to back this up, there's a lot that goes into the culture of the organization that has the capability to be authentic to that brand promise. And so Biospace had a great collection of these attributes, and I wanted to share them here. The first is long-term employees. I mean, if we have an organization who is doing something compelling, people are going to stay there. If the organization is staying true to itself and is being authentic in terms of how it's serving its community through its brand purpose, then you're going to notice there's going to be people that want to stay there, because that is meaningful work. And we know right now that people way above pay, people want to be in an organization where they are doing something, they are making a difference through the work that they do, way more than any other factor. So if you see an organization with long-term employees, that is a clear sign that there's mission-driven CX in play. The clear mission and values is obvious. We've talked about that. The peer-to-peer relationships, we hinted on this before. They've got to be there. They've got to be present in order for people to lock in. That is going to be the best way to make number one happen. Long-term employees, if they like working with one another, they're going to be there and they're going to enjoy the work that they're doing. And that enjoyment is going to spill over into the customer experience. Transparency. I've got to know what this company actually is doing. If there are layers in between what the executives are plotting, and use that word very intentionally, versus the reality that I'm living, you're not going to be a part of a mission-driven organization in that context. It's been falsified. It's been cheapened. There's got to be that transparency where you know what the organization is truly doing and how it's serving the community and serving its customers authentically, and that you know you can be a part of that. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're in a malintended game. You're a pawn in a game that can't be won. And that's very frustrating for anyone. And then ongoing professional development. You're being invested into, they're growing you towards the person that you want to become, and you're getting to serve customers very well inside of that. Diversity in the truest sense. You're bringing people into the work. They get to do it together. They get to do it for people of all types. It's so inclusive, just the mentality around CX work. It should be, it can be, it oftentimes isn't, but it so should be. And then this idea of the absence of politics. Again, that's leading to transparency. And then accessible leadership. In order for transparency to be there, we need to know the leaders that are perpetuating these ideas and these missions. We need to know where this vision is coming from and hear it validated on a very regular basis, not from the mouths of our leaders, but from their behaviors. We need to see it lived out. That's the only way that it's going to be made real. And then wins are celebrated. When people are recognized for the great things that they're able to do together, that just makes such a tremendous difference. So some attributes of when we see that company identity jumping off the page in an authentic way. So let's look at some CX silos very quickly here. I'm just going to offer a couple points on these last couple here. This is where we have this wonderful combination between marketing and CX happening. And as mentioned, marketing establishes these expectations. So much of what's happening in the work of CX is that we are creating an expectation or promise in the minds of our customers. We're sowing that seed. Here's what we do. Here's the way we're going to deliver it. But then ultimately, the delivery of that promise is going to be on CX side, the building of that trust through good, consistent delivery. So these things have to be working in tandem. So breaking down the barriers that have historically existed between marketing and CX is critically important. And I think it's happening more and more. And it's just really exciting to see that. That same mentality can be applied into just about every function of the business. Jonathan mentioned before the idea of the power core, and that's coming straight from Gene Bliss, Chief Customer Officer 2.0. Every organization has a power core that will make or break your ability to advance customer experience work. We need to recognize that power core, whether it's IT with the controlling of the digital experience and data, whether it's sales in a very revenue-driven organization where everything's about making the sale. It doesn't matter what the power core is. CX is how we deliver on our promises. It's how we earn loyalty and ultimately achieve the purposes that the power core wants. We just have to help them to see it and to speak in their terms. Let's move on to that next slide there. So, I'm not going to go over this whole thing, but leading CX change, we have to light the fire first. We have to establish urgency around this work. Otherwise, people aren't going to change. They aren't going to move forward with us unless we prove to them that they need to move forward, that there's an opportunity to do something bigger and better. So, Jonathan mentioned it doesn't matter where you are in the organization. You have the ability to influence around you and to establish some urgency around this work of CX. It is CX Day. We're entering into a new year. I want you to think big and dream big around what your organization could and would look like if CX was infused into the mentality of everybody, and specifically mission-driven CX, and how different that would look. Find a way to put some urgency behind that so that people desire it for themselves and they want to change. It could be a really powerful voice of customer testimonial. It could be some factoid around how in the industry, those organizations that are mission-driven, that are excelling in the area of customer experience, are grabbing up market share at a rapid rate. If you want to live to see 2 years from now as a business, it's time to embrace CX really well. We have to do this together, or else here's what's going to happen. But finding that right way to establish urgency with those around you. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. So this absolutely needs to start inside the house there. So, there's some great statistics that I collected here. One is the 80% of employees do not have a comprehensive employee advocacy program yet. So, there's a huge opportunity here for us to build the foundation inside the home before we're going out and trying to celebrate the great things that we're doing for our customers. We need to first be doing those for our people. And so this is a representation of the fact that we're not quite doing that yet. And we need more work in that area in the form of true ownership. John Pompei talks about this so often, how necessary it is for somebody to own EX, employee experience, for there to be clarity and strategy around this, just like we have with CX, or else it won't go anywhere. 88% of organizations fail to do a great job with onboarding. That is the moment we've set an expectation with this employee that's coming in to work for us. What a crazy life change this is. They're coming in. That moment of onboarding is where we make that promise real. We've told them all the great things that we're going to do for them as an organization. We told them who we are and what they're going to get to do is if they work here. Onboarding is the CX delivery piece. Are we making this real? And if we're not, we're missing a critical opportunity. Most organizations are not. And then 2x leads generated for employee social activities convert 7 times more than generic marketing leads. So this is where mission-driven CX and lighting the fire under your people to be a part of this is where it fuels the organization and generates ROI. If your people become ambassadors for the organization truly, and they're embracing that and demonstrating that out into the world, they have more ability to sell and to usher your organization forward than anybody else. Your marketing team cannot do that through the brand, the idea of the brand. That's an idea. If people want to relate to the brand and move forward in a more significant relationship with that brand, they need to see its people and get to know its people and see the authenticity of what's happening inside of that organization. So, I mean, stress, we know it's on the rise. And this is the latest from Gallup in terms of that poll that we have. But we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to bring friction out of this experience in the house and outside of it. So how can we ultimately do that? And the way that we do that is through the foundation of employee experience and making sure that we have this circle of psychological safety around our people, as Simon Sinek would say. Are we okay? Oh, sorry. Sorry, everybody. I was getting a phone call there many times, so I thought maybe there's something going on with the audio or something like that. So when we have this circle of psychological safety around our people, it gives them the ability to then focus forward on their customers, to focus forward on each other. But if we're allowing stress and cortisol to rise inside of the organization using a lack of transparency by people not understanding what's going on around them, the unclarity, the chaos that's generated from that, people don't have the ability to move forward with good customer experience or the idea of mission-driven CX. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to reduce that stress and friction and create the circle of psychological safety around them. So the way that we do this inside of Officium, we have great employee insights every week coming in real time through pulse surveys. And I would say that any organization, any group of people, if you want to understand the true state of the house, where you stand today, it begins here. It begins with your voice of employee program and truly understanding what their lives inside of your organization look like. And so we're looking consistently at 10 areas that make up the employee experience and talking together as leaders every other week how we can make improvements in those 10 areas. It's probably one of the most important things that we do, if not the most important thing that we do to generate mission-driven CX, because our people are locked in, the transparency is there, we're serving together, we're moving forward together. There's that alignment and that understanding of how we're serving our people so that they can serve their customers. Moving on to that next slide. So as I wrap this up, this idea of lighting the beacon, go ahead there, Sid. So I love this from Mark Schaefer from Marketing Rebellion. The fact is that we can't love a logo. As great as organizations are, we love to love them. We can't love a jingle or a piece of branded content, as flashy and beautiful as some of that is. I love creating great content, but we can love a person. and what Mark is saying here is that if we want people to love our brand, they're going to love the people in the brand. They're going to love the people that are demonstrating the brand promise and delivering it on a consistent basis. They're going to love customer service. and we saw that in that stat of people are recognizing customer service as the brand. It's because it's the people that are on the front line serving. So it makes so much sense that this is happening. And the heart of all of this is mission-driven CX. Who are we as a company? What is that identity? How are we serving our community? Are we able to back that up through great customer experiences? And if not, it's time to scale back a little bit. What Mary was talking about is so good and exciting and new and fresh. That's charging forward. But if the foundation isn't there, if the heartbeat, the mentality isn't there yet around this, you can't go forward there. You can't tap into new technologies until people are thinking clearly about customer experience and the power thereof and what mission-driven CX looks like together. Let's go to that next slide there. So, I mean, it starts with you completely and totally. I mean, as I mentioned before, I really do feel like the most translatable thing in the world is positivity and great energy, and especially when coupled with clarity. I mean, think about a coworker that you have had or maybe have now of somebody that just knows their purpose. They know what they're doing. I mean, that's like a beacon for us. We're drawn to those individuals. They're generally very happy in their jobs because they know where they sit. They know what they're doing. They're locked into the brand promise, that they're serving the customers in the way that the brand intended. And so when we behave that way, when we bring others as ambassadors, as we bring other workers into the organization that have the ability just inside of themselves to represent that brand really well, because they resonate with the mission and the values of the organization, when they can do that, it just has a reciprocal effect. It just continues to draw these people in that can work for that organization and then ultimately go out and serve it really well and earn the right to grow that customer base in the best way possible, in that customer success method that we talked about before. So it doesn't matter what level of the organization you're on. It truly begins with you. And you have this gift, this understanding now, maybe you did before, but you have this understanding of mission-driven CX. I want you to think about who you're going to give it to. Maybe it is an executive inside of your organization. Maybe there's not that executive clarity yet that was represented in that company identity matrix. That's where this begins. Let's lock that in. Then we get to look across the customer journey. Where are we failing to deliver on those promises? Let's reduce those friction points. Let's make that more consistent. Let's infuse meaning into this work for those that are doing it in this area so that we can be more consistent and more relatable as a brand. You absolutely have the power to do that. Last slide here. So I would love to be a resource for you on this topic. I've been studying this for a little while, seeing brands that are doing this excel greatly, being a part of one inside of Officium. And that's just been so much fun. So don't hesitate to reach out as you think about what this idea of mission-driven CX is going to mean for you into 2022 and how to best embrace it. I would love to assist with that in any way. So thank you very much, and turn it back over to John Pompei.
Awesome stuff, Nate. Love it. Like always, man, delivering a great message there, sharing great insights and value. You hit on a lot of really good notes there. You know, one that really stood out to me is about taking down those silos. And you talk about marketing and CX, and, you know, you and I've talked about this a lot. Every role within a company has to be customer experience focused. You know, share a little bit what you think about the role that we each play, regardless of level, title, whatever, in making a difference and demonstrating those values for the customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think one great one is you get to represent the voice of the customer. I mean, a decision that so many of us make every day. We get customer feedback, and what we do with that says so much about the caliber of the organization. Great organizations embrace that feedback, and it is given to others. It is understood, it is clarified, and it is dealt with. It is resolved. It is used to enhance. Whereas in organizations that cannot and have not embraced this yet, that feedback just disappears. And you as a customer know that. You can sniff that out very clearly when you know that your voice is not being honored and respected. So, I mean, that's one decision that we as employees are making every day. What are we doing with the gift of customer feedback? I mean, that would be a great question to ask for a CX leader that's assessing your maturity in this area of mission-driven CX. Look at that feedback cycle and what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle Lee right there has a great statement, and just the tail end of it. Instead of a turf war, we have a powerful opportunity for alliance and really bringing the different parts of an organization together in the support and the focus of that customer really shows up well with brands. And so I don't know if Sid has any other questions out there, but I know we do have a great group that's coming up here in a moment. And when I think about your message and the folks from Midday Squares that we're bringing up next, like, to me, they're a perfect example of what it means to be a mission-driven organization and brand. And so actually at this time, I want to bring Jake and Joanna into the show.
Hey, John.
Joanna, Jake, what's happening?
What's cooking? What's cooking?
Hey, I have been working all day getting ready for this session right here because I know you two bring the energy, so I needed to make sure that I'm keeping it up. But we are excited to have you guys. I know how important customer experience and employee experience is to you guys. It's built into the core of who you are. And actually, before we jump in, what I'd like to do is, give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Jake, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, John, I'm pumped about this and super excited. I think it's super important, all the stuff we're going to talk about. But my name is Jake. I'm one of the co-founders of Midday Squares. Midday Squares is a family business. My sister is my partner. My brother-in-law is my other partner. They're married. I guess my role is rainmaker. I call it chief rainmaker because I literally focus on bringing opportunities to the different departments, whether that's customer experience, whether that's sales, whether that's investments. So I do these like fishing exercises where I find people and then I air traffic control them to the right department. And I think every company going forward, in at least in the CPG world, should have a rainmaker because you bring in opportunities that wouldn't come in unless you go find them. And most departments are so focused on what they're doing that they don't get to see the outside horizon. So that's what I do at Midday Squares. And obviously my colleague here, Joanna, is the superstar on customer experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. I love that. The rainmaker, man. We're gonna continue to focus on that. But Joanna, you and I have now connected a number of times. And I think the world of you and the great work that you're doing up there with Midday Squares. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience out there?
Yeah, so my name is Joanna. I am the head of customer experience here at Midday Squares. So I joined the team about a year ago after working a lot in customer experience my whole life and in hospitality. And Jake and I joined forces to try and make the most unique but personalized experience for each of our guests. Those are our customers. We call them our guests because it's a privilege to serve anybody who chooses to even give us a shot in the CPG world. So that's what we're doing. We're here to make unique experiences and we're just having a blast doing it. Honestly, we're just trying to change the game here.
That is so awesome. And you guys are changing the game. I mean, I'm a customer of yours. So I'm up to speed with everything that's going on. I think last week you guys produced 170,000 functional chocolate bars for the first time in 1 week. Yep. I know this week you're probably upping it again because that's what you guys do. So I love that. But as we roll into this, in fact, Jake, since you're one of the co-founders, why don't you share with the group a little bit about who Midday Squares is, why you guys even started the company, the brand?
Love that question. So it's very simple. It's actually a simple story and why the product makes sense. And I'll get into why it all happened. Basically, early on, my sister Leslie was in the fashion world. She was a designer, in New York, and she was always on the go, but she was a foodie at heart. So she's always been interested in like crazy ingredients from around the world, but always on that better for you side of stuff. And then my brother-in-law, Nick, her husband, had a software company and he was obsessive with chocolate. Like he loved eating chocolate. I'm talking like O. Henry bars for the Canadians out there, Kit Kats, Mars, Hershey's, all these let's be honest, high sugar items. And my sister once said to him like, hey, I can make you a better for you chocolate snack that will satisfy that afternoon craving that you have for chocolate. And he's like, okay, let's give it a shot. So she made him this concoction of different, healthier ingredients and made him this delicious chocolate snack at the time. This is in like 2016, 2017. Long story short, fast forward a bit, Leslie ended up closing her fashion company. Nick ended up selling out of his software brand. They got married and they wanted to start a business together. And the first thing that came to mind was morning oats. They wanted to do something in the food space because again, Leslie's a foodie and Nick loves the industry itself as a whole. And the morning oat category, they tried to look into it deeply and try to figure out a product for it, but they couldn't make a product that was 10x better than the current products in the market. So they gave that up. But Nick got hit with a report from a big corporation here in Canada that does a lot of reports on the food space. And it showed that real chocolate, so anything above 55% cocoa mass, darker chocolate made with cocoa butter and not palm kernel oil, was on a tear at 44% year-over-year growth. And that vegan protein, so plant proteins, was on another tear at 36% year over year. And it all clicked when he was in the shower. He's like, holy poo, Leslie is making a baby of those two categories. She's making a real chocolate bar that has function, that's made with plant-based ingredients. So he's like, oh my God, we're launching that. That's the product we're launching. And then they approached me 6 months later, once they developed the actual bar in itself. And they're like, we need a hype person. We need someone that's going to build community. Do you want to be the third partner? And I was like, hell no. I was like, who wants to go into the chocolate protein bar? Yeah. I was like, hell no. Go. I'm like to them, did you guys go to the grocery store and see the aisles of bars that are out there? I said, thank you very much. I love you guys. Good luck on your journey. Go win, be you, and kill it. Then they came back to me 2 months after that. And they're like, we really need someone. It's either going to be you as a partner, or we're going to go hire someone and pay a lot of money for that person. And at the time I got broken up with from my ex-girlfriend. And I was in a weird stage in my life where I'm like, I don't really want to throw parties anymore, because that's what I was doing. I was like, you know what? Why not? I'll jump in. There's no reason not to. I gave them all the money I had. I basically had to move back home. And August 2018, we launched Midday Squares as the first functional chocolate bar. Take a chocolate bar, take a protein bar, have a baby, but get rid of the junk that's in protein bars, but make it as delicious as chocolate bars. And the one thing that set us apart, two things I would say, other than product market fit, which is super important if you're starting a business, is we believed in storytelling. So we believed in making sure that our guests, as Joanna said before, feel like they know us. So we humanize the brand through a vehicle of storytelling, using the idea of basically showing the good, the bad, the ugly, the transparent journey of how we're building this business to our customer base. And that allowed them to feel like they're on the roller coaster with us. On good times and bad times, they feel the emotions. They are empathetic for what we're going through. And that empathy allows us to really explode in this space, because most food companies or food conglomerates, they make great products. The problem is there's no transparency on anything. There's no humanization of the brand. And fast forward a bit of time, we had hyper growth. We built out a factory. We had to build our own Willy Wonka factory because no one can make the product. We ended up starting to build our team, and a very important team leads me to my next point, which is our customer experience team. Our goal was to not really make it a department at Midday Squares, but to focus on making it a mindset of basically treating our guests as a friend, as a human, because there's nothing worse, John, than getting an email that's robotic or non-personalized, especially if the brand is so personable on its social media, in store, and all this stuff. Imagine the disconnect you would have if you're emailing or messaging and the person that's answering you is not talking like a human. And that's when we brought Joanna on to handle the customer experience and really make sure that it is consistently 150% of the time humanized.
Yeah, I mean, that's so powerful. Great story and great successes thus far. You know, like I said, as a customer of yours, Jake, you, Leslie, and Nick are sitting on my desk at home. I got that picture from the first box I got from you guys. There's nothing like it, because that in itself was a customer experience moment for me. Mm-hmm. And I know that, Joanna, that's the kind of stuff you guys do, as Jake talks about customer experience mindset. Talk a little bit about what customer experience really is at Midday Squares and how you and the organization really continue to take that forward.
Well, like, just to build a little bit on what Jake said, it's really not a department, it's a mindset. Right now Jake is obviously helping with sales and customer experience, but right now, like, I'm the head of that team and we're just two people. So it's really personable because every person that we speak to gets a different interaction, but it's also being able to read the customer, the guest, and be able to create a personalized experience per person. So there's no copy pasting. And one of my biggest rules is there's just no. We always have to find an alternate positive solution to any guest issue or just to any touch point. And we have so much data and information out there to make things personable. And we have so much information on our customers that we can always go do that extra little step to find research and make a moment special for someone. What's special to one person might not be special to someone else. So just playing on that information that you have and just using that information to really create unique experiences. So for somebody, it might be receiving a voice note from Jake. From somebody else, it might be receiving a video. Somebody might enjoy receiving a letter in the mail. I mean, who receives letters in the mail anymore? So it's really being able to read your client and be human, but just not, copy pasting. For me, that's like a big no on our team. There's no copy paste. It's really, everything has to be unique and just be human. Like, really visualize yourself in someone's shoes. Somebody has a problem sometimes and you'll think, like, why are they complaining about this? Or you'll get in that negative energy, which is just going to provide a negative experience for someone. Really do the practice of imagining yourself as that person in their shoes when they're having that issue, and it's going to be the best way to help you resolve it. Because how would you like to be spoken to, or how would you like to have that situation resolved if you were dealing with that specific situation? And I love Squares, you have that freedom to do that. There's no rule book, or, we were kind of discussing in a meeting today that, there's not a lot of structure yet. There's not a lot of rule books and how do you go about things. We're writing the book, we're building the machine, we're going as we go. So we're setting the standards, and we're learning from, yes, our mistakes, but also learning how to build these positive experiences and just taking, sometimes we're winging it, but as long as it's a positive outcome and at the end of the day, we're making people happy, I think that's what's the most important thing.
Yeah, you're really hitting on some keynotes there. And I know that we've talked about this throughout the day, but at the end of the day, empowerment to employees is such a powerful thing. And, if either one of you can share, like, how do you guys think of culture within Midday Squares, and what do you do to create that empowerment level across the board for all employees?
Yeah. I mean, it's important. It's just like doing, like, Jake would come in sometimes and literally just do pump ups, like in the middle of the day, middle of the office, blast the speakers, get up, dance, and just shake it off. Like, we're all going to have bad days. There's all going to be things that happen. If you're not having a good day, you're encouraged to stay home and work from home. Like, if you're having a good day, come and share your experience, tell a story. We have a base camp where we, kind of chat with each other and share projects. If you get a good review from someone or a great story, share that. And it's just building on the experience, but also building, like, if you're feeling fired up, it's going to fire up people around you. It's very transferable energy, I find. So if someone comes in and they're super happy, in a good mood, and they want to share something with the team, that's going to get transferred over. Like this morning we had a meeting. It was like 10 minutes. I left there, I was super fired up. I'm like, wow, like, I remember why I'm here. I know what I'm doing. I'm on a mission. I have a purpose, and that feels really good. And that transfers up to everybody that's in the office.
Yeah, John, I want to add something to that. So company culture is super important. And, like United States has its constitution, we have our own constitution at our office, which is our core values. And it's not just buzzword of core values. And I think this is super important. It's actually stuff that we really believe in and that we need people to embrace and actually want to embrace. If they don't, this isn't the right place for you to work. For example, John, we film everything. We have cameras rolling 24/7 on moments of good, bad, ugly. That means someone could be getting fired. That means something could be yelling at each other. It could be a triumph of celebration. And there's contracts in place to understand that when you start, that this is part of our growth in our company. It's a huge factor of storytelling, and you need to either be part of it or not be part of it. And for us, the door is always open for people that don't want to be part of this journey. We want everyone to want to be here and be excited about being here. And for example, we are very open as a company. If you want to leave, we'll actually help you get out and leave and find another job, because we want our alumni to be amazing. We want our alumni to go out there and thrive. And I think that creates this culture of, yes, it's very competitive in terms of, because we're hyper growing this company very fast. We want to be the next Hershey's in the next 10 years. Well, they did it in 50 years. You want to do it in 10 years. So, there's a lot of hyper competitiveness and a lot of pressure, but at the same time, this is one family. And everyone is equal in the sense of, everything. And communication and transparency, John, just like we do with our customer base, is the same thing between colleagues, between my partners. We have a business therapist that we talk about communication and to get things crossed, because this doesn't mean it's green to someone else. And what that means is that people see things differently and understand things differently. You need to understand how people receive. And you have to be empathetic. If you're not empathetic, if you don't lead with empathy, John, your culture can't be good, because then brute force comes in, and brute force creates this tension. So I think company culture is something that going forward in the future of any industry is going to be a big player in terms of a winning company.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, there's so many things there that you guys hit on, but I want to go back. Like, you guys to me seem so unique. When you guys were formulating the company, and even as you evolve, are there brands out there that you look at and you go, boy, I like the way they do this. I want to bring some of that in? Or how much of it is just like, hey, we're creating something new and fresh and unique? How do you guys work through that?
Joanna, you want me to take it?
Yeah, go for it.
So first things first, we like a company like Nike, and I'll tell you why. We like the impact that they've made. So when you go buy a pair of Nikes, you're in the mood to work out. It reminds you of, like, you feel good. You get on that treadmill, you can go do that stuff. For Midday Squares, we want to make an impact in a community that's basically not driven on the workout scene. It's driven on good vibes and just being real. And when you have that, you're really building a genuine group of people that are, part of everything that you go through. And we really emphasize that, is that we want to be the next Hershey's in terms of chocolate, company in terms of that, but on the idea of Nike in terms of impact. And I just think that a lot of companies, its vision is to just sell, build and sell. Our company is to build and build and build and build and build to become a new age conglomerate. Yeah. And we just want to redefine the way that you do that. And the problem with media is this new path that we took is an unraveled path. It's not existent that you have, almost reality show every single day at the company, right? And there's a lot of bumps that come with that and a lot of sacrifices that have not been seen. So when we go through something, we're one of the first to go through it, and there's no right or wrong answer. So we, just like Joanna said before, she said a great point. We're trying to write the standards, and that customer experience too. Joanna's trying to write the standards by creating that humanization at a whole other level at scale. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, if folks are out there and they're not customers of yours, they're missing like what you guys really think about when you talk about experience. Because like I said, the first time I placed an order with you guys, I open up a box, and in this box, I get a personalized photograph with a personalized note on it, right? And it's those little things that really make a difference. And as you guys think about the diverse population that you're servicing, how do you consider what methods or modes you use to interact with them?
I mean, I think you kind of get to know your customers. And like I said, we call them guests, but you kind of, just by talking to people, realize how they like to be engaged with. I mean, somebody who reaches out with a very serious problem, you're not going to, make light of the situation, right? You have to be able to read certain situations. It's also the different platforms. So we've come to notice that people who are on TikTok are going to be more people who are like Gen Z. So they like to know something that's quick and efficient. Instagram, those are the, our OG followers, people who've been coming and following us since the very beginning. They're really going to appreciate, getting a video, personalized video from one of the founders or from somebody on the team, or a voice note. Whereas somebody on Facebook, oftentimes it's a little bit of an older audience. So somebody who's going to need a little bit more direction. So somebody who's having trouble entering a promo code, or someone who's having an issue trying to place an order. So as soon as you kind of get in there, really get into your data, start speaking to your guests, really getting to know them, you're going to know how to best to engage with them, I think. And just really using the best common sense to really read a situation and just act accordingly to that situation. Again, always personalized to the exact situation, the person you're speaking to, and not just taking, okay, well, if it was a shipping issue, copy paste, this is how we're going to deal with it. Each person is different. Each person is going to live it in a different way. So you really need to just read the situation and act accordingly.
It's not one size fits all, John. And that's what she's trying to say, I believe, is everything's different, and every platform's different, and everything, every type of method we use is different. Yeah, Joanna's right. We could send a video, a voice note. We could do like a picture, a GIF. You could do anything you want, but you need to learn who you're dealing with. And that's why we like the Toyota method of how they operate their manufacturing, is they ask 5 whys, right? When you have an issue, you ask why, because at the end of the day, someone that might be an error of just the shipping just missed by 1 day could mean the entire world. Because if you don't know what they went through to get that, or what they're actually using it for, maybe they have a whole event that they're using it for, and you don't know, you're not going to treat it as it's such a big deal. But if you ask why and then you understand, then Joanna and her team can come up with a solution that will make sure that they understand and they realize that, okay, this person had an event to do. Can we drive someone down there and get there, even if it's going to cost us $500? Because that's what differentiates us from any other company. Because putting love, unfortunately, for some reason, is such a low standard in this world, John. I don't know what happened, but there's such a low standard of putting love into, the experience or the product that you make. And customer experience doesn't just go from how Joanna interacts with the touch point. It also goes with how our production team makes the product. If they're making the product and the chocolate's messy all the time, John, that's a bad customer experience thing, right? So it's a full circle approach. It's a full company approach.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that you guys all tend to roll up your sleeves and do what needs to be done, because, again, you guys are so transparent with who you are and what's going on. I remember seeing a video and a post from Leslie not too long ago, to where you guys had some backup or whatever in your production area, and everyone hopped in there and she shared like what you guys were doing, working throughout the night just to get stuff produced, packed, and shipped out. And so it's that effort and energy that really makes a difference. When you think about employees and you're interviewing or posting a position, a lot of people these days think about, well, we'll just get someone in here and we'll train them to do what we want. You guys, I think, take a different approach, if I'm not mistaken, because you're all about the right profile that matches your values and who you are. Talk a little bit about how you take that approach and what it is.
Joanna, you want to talk about your experience that you had?
You know what? It was the strangest experience. I honestly thought it was a hoax. Like my fiance was telling me, he's like, are you sure this is legit? Like, usually do the whole interview thing where you got to apply. And then there's first interview, second interview. They make you wait a little bit. And then you have to meet with so many structures, so many levels of people. And then Jake, like I applied on Indeed and he chatted with me. He's like, hey, why don't you come in for a project? And I'm like, a project? Like what project does he want me to do? I'm like, do I have to prepare for this? He's like, no, just show up. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, well, I know they're not super corporate, so I'm not going to like come with the whole blazer and everything, but I don't want to show up in my sweats either. Like really hard to read these guys. And I really, really wanted the job because I'd been following Midday Squares for like 2 years. I was a total fan. And I came in with Jake and we literally just had a conversation for like an hour and a half. We just talked. He never asked me a question about my schooling, about my past, about my experience in hotels. Like we just had a genuine conversation. Then I did a project, which was just like answering, a couple of guest inquiries and comments on Facebook to just see if I had the brand voice essentially. But that was it. And then it was like, okay, go meet with everybody, go introduce yourself, sit down, talk with the family, and have fun. Like, we'll see you and we'll let you know. And for me, it was the strangest thing. I'm like, wow, like this was so real and so human, but no testing, no like asking about your past, and you have the book smarts. And that was the first time in my experience interviewing that I ever had that experience, to the point that I'm like, well, maybe I just completely blew it because he never asked me a question. So maybe they're just not interested. And right off the bat, he was just like, no, this is not the right fit. And it ended up being great because they called me within a couple of days and I got the job. So I really used that experience as well when I was in the hiring process of hiring my first associate, of just like, okay, let's not do this whole by the book thing. And let's not go on Google and search up what to ask your candidates in an interview. And let's just have a real talk and conversation and see if we mesh. And that's the best way to know if you're going to be able to work well with somebody.
Yeah, you guys are a great example of what Nate was talking about with mission-driven CX. And again, like for all of those out there, customer experience is not a blueprint, right? And you guys are proving that out. And I love that about you guys and what you're doing. As you think about going forward, one of the things that certainly is happening in this space is technology is changing all the time, right? Expectations of customers changing all of the time. How do you guys continue to stay in tune with that and stay ahead of it, actually?
I think staying ahead is, being I wouldn't say we're a startup anymore. We're in like that mid-level growth where we're trying to go from, we're 65 people. We want to keep growing. And, we're not at that phase where we're just scrapping everything together. We still are at an earlier stage, which I would say. So in the meantime, right now, we're not really looking so much at platforms and stuff like that. There are some stuff we use that do help us out. But I think at the end of the day, it goes back to, and people are going to disagree with me on this one, but again, the humanized approach is what I really believe in, at least from my standpoint, to continue to do, even if it's a lot of hard work. If that means we need to stock people in to continuously get this human experience out there, we're going to dedicate ourselves to it. Because when you make a great experience or you solve someone's issue, which is basically more or less what customer experience is, in my opinion, they will go to the dinner table at night where there's 5 people, whether that's their family or their friends, and they're going to use their megaphone and share what they just went through. In today's world, John, you can go within the snap of a finger to Google or to any review you want to post and post your experience that you just had, and it will be shared with thousands of people down the line. It is a billboard. So if you're not, and I'm not saying do this whole thing of like, make everyone just feel jolly and be fake. I'm saying be authentic, humanize the experience continuously with human brain, and continuously do things like, for example, not send a video that's automated that says, hey, Crew Love, how are you? Thank you for supporting us. Crew Love's our community. No. Hey, John, how you doing? My name's Jake. I'm one of the co-founders. Hey, John, my name's Joanna. I'm in charge of customer experience here. We just want to thank you. The fact that we say your name is the reason why they're going to share their experience at the dinner table. That little motion that's not automated is a big difference. So as we grow, my goal my partners might not love this, but is to continuously build more humans in there, because it allows the human brain to create serendipity, and that serendipity is magical.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So a couple things here. I want to play a brief little game with the two of you, because I know that there's some keywords out there that are important in this space, and I want to have you guys be able to share with the audience like the first thing that comes to mind when I throw this word out to you. So we're going to start off with you, Jake. So first thing that comes to mind when I say customer.
Friend.
Joanna, first thing that comes to mind when I say employee.
Appreciation.
All right, Jake, when I say culture.
Family.
Joanna, when I say experience.
Humanized.
Jake, when I say good vibe.
Midday Squares.
Yeah.
Joanna, when I say future.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. The future.
Help her out, Jake.
The future is that we're going to be the modern day Willy Wonka.
Love that. Love that. And last one, just because, again, I read it from Leslie the other day. When I say 170,000.
Team.
Excellent. All right. So we have some folks out there in the audience that have a lot of different functions across, customer experience, customer support. I'm going to give each of you a moment. Like, what would you share with them about the role that they play in making a difference for their customer and their brand? Whoever wants to go first.
Joanna. No, you're kicking it.
What makes a difference for the customer?
Yeah. What advice would you give them to help them think about, from their role, regardless of what it is, how they can make a difference for their customer and for their brand?
I think it's like Jake said, it's really that everybody, no matter if you're on the customer experience team or if you're in manufacturing or if you're in sales, is to just really always put yourself in the customer's situation, in their shoes, and just to make it as human as possible, and just to continuously to be authentic, not only to yourself, but to the brand. And just always put all of that out there, and just be true to you, because when you're being fake, oftentimes people say fake it till you make it. And I actually learned that in hospitality school, whereas people are like, yeah, just fake it till you make it. And I think that's wrong. I think if you're not meant to be in the role that you're doing, then maybe you should switch out or consider something else. But everybody really needs to put the customer, no matter what department, whatever team they're on, first, and to understand from the way the chocolate's produced to the way that the packaging is done to the way that it's sold, is that to always keep the customer in mind. So you're always in that good vibe, and just to be authentic to yourself and to be true to you. And maybe for the first 15, 20 years of your life, customer experience was good for you, but maybe at a certain point it wasn't. And as soon as that shuts off, you have to listen to that voice and do what's right for you. Because as soon as you're negative, or as soon as the energy's not there, or you're not in the vibe, or you're faking it, to me, you're not going to make it. To me, you're going to fail. So just stay authentic.
Awesome. Jake.
I'm going to say it in short. Continuously think about two things: empathy and humanization. If you think about those two things and you actively make an effort to be authentic and genuine in both those things, I promise you, your customer experience and brand will have explosiveness. Because again, like I bring back before, there's a lack of love in the industries. I don't understand why. I think people have this switch of impatience and not being patient with their customers. And sometimes customers can be very, very difficult. But if you're empathetic, you'll find out why. You'll ask yourself why 5 times to get that answer, and you'll get to the answer.
I think that word is great, Jake, is patience. Patience is a virtue, and just, that's it. Take the time, be patient. There's no time limit on customers. We always say that, like, if a call is an hour and a half, then it's an hour and a half. And you take that time to listen, to be empathetic, and to just better understand who you're speaking to and what you're dealing with. And if it's 10 seconds, then great. Then that was the situation. But just, there shouldn't ever be a time limit on your customer. And once you understand that and you can be empathetic and authentic, then you're sure to succeed.
Awesome. Look, like I said, I'm a customer. I love what you guys represent. I came for the bar. I stayed for the experience. I highly recommend that everyone else do the same, because both the product and the experience are top notch. I think we're going to bring Sid and Nate in here to maybe do a little bit of Q&A before we wrap for the day.
Thank you, John.
That was awesome, man. Jake, Joanna, I just love you all. Your company. I just feel like you are the personification of the things that we talk about on so many different levels. I'm so excited by both of you. John, that quote at the end there, man. I feel like Midday Squares needs to. I came for the bar. I stayed for the experience. That's.
I love that.
I actually love it. I love it. John, you might get famous.
Yeah, we're rocking our Midday Squares merch.
Yeah,
We got
the
our
other
socks
swag. I
on.
love it.
Oh,
we
I love
you
it.
guys.
Oh, and Jake, I do have my red Nikes. You probably can't see them.
Oh, are you going running this afternoon or what?
Well, no, I mean, I was trying to hype myself up for this event because I'm going to be honest with you guys. This morning, I was just really nervous.
You're
Something was
killing
gonna
it.
go
You're
wrong.
on fire. You're on
And,
fire.
You're on fire always.
But then to your point, Jake, I put on my red Nikes and I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to show up and do it. And like that embodiment of that brand, that made a difference to me this morning. So I think you nailed that comment.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, do we have a couple questions that have come in from our folks here?
I say, yeah, people leave your comments if there's any comments there. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
awesome.
So, I mean, one question that I would have in terms of just to encourage those that maybe don't think about customer experience because, maybe they're just producing a product or they're a utilities company. I mean, tell us how you can transcend that mentality and really make customer experience part of your brand.
So I think if you're like not a service necessarily, or like even just like you said, a product, I think it's super important because at the end of the day, it's just a form of communication. And you optimize your communication. No one wants to talk to a mean person. No one's interested. You don't have to in life. So why would you choose to? So, when it's a choice, and I think everyone could choose to be nice or choose to be empathetic. And if you're not, it will have long effects because people have the choice to find another product. It's not invincible that, there's thousands of other chocolate bars. I think ours is way better. But at the end of the day, there's thousands of other options within the snap of a finger. So it's important to be empathetic and real because they can go find it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's capturing every industry, every area. These things that used to think they were bulletproof from having to create a holistic experience. It's not the case anymore. And you all are proving that. It's remarkable to me.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So, I mean, Joanna, you fascinate me. I got to say, the fact that you came from hospitality and made the leap into what has to be one of the freshest, hippest brands of all time. What did that feel like?
Honestly, it felt kind of scary at first because I'd been doing this since I was like 15, just working in hotels, restaurant, and that whole vibe. And then I always loved Midday Squares, like I was telling John before, and I was consistently waiting for them to post something customer experience. And I think life just happened. And taking this risk, it was huge. I mean, you're leaving behind these big hotel structures that have policies and procedures. Everything's been the same for years on end. And you're going for a startup, and it's a huge risk. And everybody was telling me, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Look, I believe in this product. I'm passionate. I'm telling you, they're going to make it to the top. I want to be at the top when they get there. I was born to do amazing things. I'm destined to do great things, and I will do great things here." And I just dropped everything and I was like, let's just go. Like, that's the motto. Let's go. I'm on the train. And I always say, like, I'm going to die on this hill. No matter what happens, I'm on the hill. I'm here till the end. And it feels great to also just be able to use my talents and my knowledge in a different context. And it is possible to do that. And now I'm writing the book the way that I think it should be written.
I love it.
As opposed to a book that I was given and told, you got to follow these rules. And when this happens, I think it's just so robotic. And I've had these similar experiences in hotels. Like in the last month, I had horrible customer experiences. And I was bummed. I was like, why do you have to deal with situations this way? Like, I know you can make a difference. I know you're choosing to do it in this kind of textbook style way. And it's just a bummer because it's turned me off from ever wanting to come back. And as somebody who used to work there and knowing how it works, like I empathize with the employees, but now working in an industry and working in a different company where you are kind of empowered to be yourself and empowered to make decisions and just be empathetic and be great. I feel more comfortable, and I feel like it's the first time I can really be myself ever in my entire life. And that feels really, really good.
It's awesome. I think one of my favorite things about your approach right now is you didn't just give the middle finger to the hospitality industry and the things you learned there. You learned some really good things, and you have taken those things and you are taking the best of the best, and you are bringing new things in all the time. You have created a CX director brand that I've never seen before that I think is revolutionary. I just love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think there's a lot for me to learn, and every day is a journey, but the fact that I've been given the opportunity and the chance to kind of just play the game, like, I'm here to win. I know Midday Squares is here to win. So, like, let's just win together, and there'll be mistakes, there'll be bumps, but we're going to learn from them. And that's how you achieve greatness, is just take a shot for it, you know?
Yeah.
I'll bet you were both awesome at the game Candyland growing up.
So I have a question for you guys, kind of going back to how we opened up this CX Day celebration. We're talking about, obviously the hard year that a lot of us have had. What's one thing, and both of you guys can answer if you guys have the same, of something that you've learned over the past year that, you kind of mentioned you're a little bit past the startup realm, but what you've learned in this past year with COVID and with just all of the things that have hit, what's something that you can leave our audience with?
Yeah, for me, Joanna, I'll take it on a big company. We decided to, when COVID hit, March 2020, let's call it, we lost 70% of our retail sales. And, being a manufacturer, you operate your own manufacturing plant, which when it's idle, you're losing dollars. You're paying people to not do anything, right?
Yeah.
And we realized, like, oh my God, we're actually might be in trouble for the first time. We had $10,000 in our bank account. We had a team of 26 people at the time, and they were it's our family, right? We call it our family. And we ended up saying, okay, what do? We went home, we sulked for one day, the three of us, my two other partners, and then we came back with firepower in us. And we said, we're going to go on offense when every single company in our category, in our field, is going on defense.
Wow.
We hired. We went on a hiring blitz of like 20 people right off the bat. We blew up. Our growth was like 108%. And motto is very simple. When everyone's defense, we go offense. And Joanna said it clearly, we die on the hill. So there's no point of doing this if it's not going to be greatness. And I think that fear is a real thing in life. Fear is very real, but you choose where you want that to play. You could either have it as your enemy, which can devastate you, or as an ally, and it will push you. And we decided to use push. We decided to choose fear as an ally and go on offense.
Wow, love that.
I was in the bathroom a little bit ago, and they had the Experience Life magazine, which I just thought was awesome. And it's Jason and Adapt and Grow. I feel like I'm feeling that energy coming off Jake right now from the Experience Life magazine.
Yes. No, for me, I would say on a different context would be just to, it's never too late to restart. It's never too late to start something new, and just believe in yourself. Like, I was somebody who didn't have a lot of confidence. I would be terrified to even be on something like this ever, to the podcast. When you guys invited me to the podcast, I was freaking out. And it's just like, be authentically yourself, be unapologetically yourself, and just be you. That's the only way to win. And I'm learning how to do that. I'm gaining my confidence. And that's honestly, for me, the biggest takeaway from COVID is that it was a way to restart, and just try something new. And that's totally okay. And just go for it.
I love that.
That's so cool that you all doubled down when you did. What a courageous and bold move. And when I think about Midday Squares, the first word that pops in my mind is bold. And
Yes.
You guys are doing it. I love it.
I love it.
And for the whole audience, right? Like, this is such a great vision to want to be, but this is also totally attainable. Just like they were saying, like, every single one that's watching who feels like, I don't have the freedom to do that at my job right now. You have the skills and the tool sets to be able to do that, and obviously all of us here want to help be a resource and a network to help cheer you on, but this is attainable. This is what we want every company and every CX professional to be able to experience: the joy and the excitement, the boldness, right? To just step outside of that box. So we love that. We love having Midday Squares here to encourage us.
Dang.
It's possible.
Well said, Sid.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
Got us all hype. I love it.
I know, you should be fired up.
That's good. Well,
Perfect.
yeah, you all are awesome. Thank you so much. We so appreciate your time. I know how valuable that is. This will not be the last time that we're hanging out with you all with some great content, but we just so appreciate you both. Thank you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate y'all.
Yes.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well,
We're cool.
we're wrapping up here. We do have another gift card that we want to give out. We've been really happy and impressed by Josh Lopez. Thank you so much, Josh, for all your great comments and participating all the way through. So we'd love to give you a $100 Amazon gift card, and we're definitely going to buy some Midday Squares, a couple boxes as well to give out to some folks.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll be a couple of you receiving a surprise Midday Squares box in the mail. Peanut butter. That's the one. John feels otherwise. What's your favorite?
Crunch, man.
Crunch.
I like that texture.
You know, you can't go wrong. They're all very good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, are we ready for some closing thoughts, Sid, as we wrap up here? Well, I mean, what an awesome celebration of CX Day. We're just so honored that you all chose to be here with us for this time. And we just hope you're encouraged. I mean, if you leave anything feeling any way, we want you to be encouraged and hopeful for what's coming in 2022. The work that you are doing is so important. You have the ability to reduce stress, to bring harmony to your company, to the people that work inside of it, to your customers. And it has never been more needed than it is today. So we're so grateful for you. Please keep following Officium. We got some great stuff coming in terms of content.
Yeah, and we do have one quick question to kind of close out the event. You know, we asked at the beginning, what did you learn in this past year? And we went through mission-driven CX, how to prove the ROI, AI and all of this stuff. Like, we had some great speakers who really dropped the knowledge bomb on all of us. But our question to end it out, and we'd love for you to engage us in the chat, is what do you want to grow in 2022 as we all kind of get ready for this next year? You know, it's already October, which is insane.
It is.
You know, what do you want to grow in? And I don't know if you want to phrase that a different way, but what's something you want to achieve next year or grow in? Share below. We got one more gift card to give away. So who has the best answer? I don't know, but we would love to hear from you guys as we close out. And we, again, just want to say a huge thank you to everyone. We know there's a ton of events going on today in celebration, and we love that. And we're so thankful that you guys chose to be it and enjoy it with us. So that means a lot.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Mary. Thank you to everybody that participated on this. And we will be back even bigger, even better for CX Day 2022. In the meantime, thank you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.